The girl looked around. She was at one of the events where, as usual, she found herself in the company of gossips. All around, one could hear only the heavy sighs of married ladies, each of whom did not like their lives. The lady was also asked, but only out of interest as to why she was silent. It would soon be a year since she had been married. Laphirion cleared her throat and stated that Lady Gloria and Circia were part of the family, and they were the ones who treated her well. The woman has also heard the rumors, and she knows that His Excellency's cold nature is also true. A voice was heard from behind, and then the ladies were hugged. There was that same Archduke Turdeo Dane Laphirion. The young man said that he had already looked for his wife. As soon as he lost sight of her for even a second, he immediately began to worry. The boy's voice was heard. The mother had already said that she wanted to leave, but he did not let her go. Theo, however, behaved incorrectly. Even Circe Jane Laphirion noticed this. As soon as the woman was greeted, she immediately began to smile. After all, she also missed Farashati. Uncle Phoenix, Con Laphirion, and Alet, who wanted to go to her sister, appeared in the hall on time. Mrs. Gloria was the last one to come down to the hall. She was angry that there was such a fuss about the event. M noted that at her age it was extremely difficult for her to be at the ball. Farashati, walking behind, said that the woman was still full of strength. The lady asked her daughter-in-law to choose. She could get either the lands of Laphirion or the mines. For saving the family, she had the right to whatever she wanted. The beauty refused again, to which she received an offer to take possession of everything. People immediately began to clap, considering the Archduchess incredible. Farashati exhaled. It was still difficult. The reason for it all was that her husband's family was too obsessed with her. Not long ago, a lady came to His Excellency to ask him to marry her for just a year. Of course, the beauty's proposal was sudden, but she knew that she had to marry the man. Zahart was an ordinary daughter of a count. Nothing special about her. She was an orphan. The lady's beloved Schiff, her stepmother, and Reina, her sister, shed tears together over the count's grave. Only they were close to Shashi. When her father died, everything turned upside down, but the lady believed that she had to take care of them even after that. Everything changed even more. The heroine was lying on the bed looking at the beautiful fireworks pouring out in the sky. Schiff came up and, smiling, began to beg that his beloved would die sooner. The remaining family wanted to inherit the lady's inheritance. Death would come from a curse, a perfect means of murder. The stepmother laughed. The count himself put a noose around his daughter's neck when he left her the entire inheritance. Schiff stood up and walked over to Reina to hug her. The lady couldn't believe it. What was happening was a deception again. Smiling, the brunette asked her sister if she seriously thought the man was her man. All this time the young man pretended to love, but in fact they had everything planned out. He was pretending and was going to kill his wife. They were all acting. Nothing was real. The ladies never loved. The stepmother came up with a pillow. She wished not to worry. They would take care of the inheritance after the death of her daughter. The heroine promised that she would take revenge. It seemed like everything was over, but when she opened her eyes again, she could not believe what was happening. The lady began to conduct an investigation, and everything led to the answer that she went into the past. To all questions to the servants, she received an identical answer. The stepmother and Reina smiled as if nothing had happened. It seemed as if everything was just a dream. Farashati thought she was going crazy, but soon she began to understand the situation a little. Seeing Shifa running with a bouquet in his hands at the same time and in the same place, Zachary realized that something incredible had happened to her. It was hard to believe, but the beauty still returned to the past when she had not yet been betrayed. The lady needed to save herself and her inheritance after that day. She realized that she was powerless in the family. There was a desire to make them suffer, but all the lady did was make Shifa leave. She was scared. While the heroine stood in the corridor of someone else's estate, she kept wondering what would happen next. She remembered the words about the curse. Zahart knew she needed to find a way to survive, so she came to the Archduke. When the heroine entered the hall, she immediately said that she wanted to get married and needed a man's help. Turdeo Laphirion remained calm, his face like stone. He didn't care. The hero was the ancestor of his family and received his position as Grand Duke for his contribution to the development of the empire. Previously, there was a war with the Kingdom of Schwarz. Everyone thought that they would win, But when the Duke and his warriors joined, everything ended. The brunette sitting opposite asks why the wedding is needed. He could not have expected such a turn of events. A man married a girl he had been courting for a long time, but after 2 months they divorced. She told the world that her husband was terrible. Farasati quickly realized that she needed Terdeo. She reported that the family wanted to encroach on the inheritance. The man immediately refused. The lady could not lose the opportunity, so she grabbed his hand to stop him. The ring on her finger injured the young man's palm. The brunette looked angrily. His precious time was being wasted, so it would be better for it all to end sooner. The reason the Grand Duke returned to the capital is because he refused to marry the Empress. Now he needs to find himself a wife. The Emperor repeatedly tried to force the young man to marry his daughter, but was defeated time and time again. The Archduke has repeatedly stated that everything connected with marriage is alien to him, and in order to avoid a relationship with the princess, the young man needs to find himself another woman. The lady is scared, but she doesn't want to leave just like that. The woman heard rumors and now asks him to marry her. Farasati couldn't say that she had seen the future, so she simply kept asking for a favor for at least 1 year. The woman was very worried. She understood that she really did not know whether she could trust even the Duke's people. The man said that he was starting to lose patience and that he just didn't want to talk anymore. The Grand Duke left and the lady understood that this was the end. Everything went dark before her eyes and she fainted. The woman didn't know what was happening until she suddenly woke up. She was sitting in a hole while 2 workers with shovels were standing above who immediately became scared. Looking around, Zakhart did not understand how it happened when she fell. She was sure that she died, but everything was not like that at all. The beauty began to suspect that everything was not so simple. She assumed that they decided to bury her alive. Very soon the Grand Duke came to the pit. No matter how crazy he was, he had no right to do this. The young man was surprised that the heroine was alive. He bent down and extended his hand to help the beauty get out. The brunette explained that he really didn't want this. It was all a stupid mistake. The girl didn't understand why they were apologizing to her. When the lady found herself back in the estate and came to her senses, she finally realized that she had been too reckless. The woman again began to ask why they were trying to kill her, and the young man asked if Farasati bit her nails, and the answer was yes. The girl injured the man with a ring. Blood got into her mouth. To the heroine's surprise, the man still said that he would consider the offer. Sharply cutting his palm, the hero reached out to Zakhart. It was important to him how she would ultimately pass the test. They put a hand to her mouth, and then everything went dark before her eyes again. After some time, the lady woke up in bed. The heroine felt the same pain as before, but for some reason she did not die. This time she did not return to the past. Backing away on the bed, the girl began to ask why they were trying to kill her. The answer surprised her. The Lefarian family was cursed. A few drops of the Duke's family's blood could kill a person. The girl immediately remembered that the newspapers had reported this. No one knew if it was true. The great Letharian won the war and led the empire to victory, but people said that the people nearby did not live long. What happened was that the lady swallowed poison. The Duke thought she was dead, and so he sent her to a pit to bury her. The surprising thing is that the heroine came back to life. This should not have happened. Terdeo Dane did not understand how this was possible. Milady began to ask for mercy. Even if the secret was revealed for some reason, the hero only smiled at these words. After the lady's mother died, her father always said that he would protect her. There must have been a reason why he brought her stepmother and Reina into the house. After the death of the father, the family tried in every way to sympathize, saying that they would definitely find help, at least psychological. Farasati realized that everything could be unchanged, and that meant something else, so as not to think about it. She took a letter out of her pocket. As soon as the stepmother read the first lines, her face changed and true anger immediately appeared on her features. Smiling, the beauty said that she had indeed decided to marry the Grand Duke. As the woman left, the family started screaming, everyone asking what was wrong, because Shasha was supposed to be in love with Schiff. Without listening to any persuasion, the girl announced that her baby would soon arrive from the east as a representative of the maternal line. The stepmother and Reina will be required to leave the main building, and outsiders are prohibited from entering the estate. The lady promised herself that in the future she would make sure that her friends would lose more than had already been taken from them. In marriage with Terdion, the girl was guaranteed safety for 1 year. He decided to study the body for a year to understand why the curse does not work. The lady was going to sort out her plan later. The magnificent wedding was coming to an end. We had to prepare in 3 days, and in the end, everything turned out as well as possible. The whole day the lady was waiting for their wedding to end. Everything around was overly ostentatious, only spoiling the mood. The two got married so that the Duke would not have to marry the princess. Terdeo did not even try to hide this fact. When the man asked if Ferashati was going to renew, she just laughed, joking that she would think about it. In fact, she was afraid that if she decided to stay for a longer period of time, she would definitely die. On the day of the first death, Schiff spoke of some kind of curse. The pain matched what happened because of La Furion. The woman asked if it was possible that the young man was selling the family's blood as poison. She had no other questions. When the lady became angry, she said that in the past, when she was dying, she felt the same way. Ferashati ran away quickly. She did not want to go into details and asked herself to be calm. Since there were people on the street, it was decided to go to the carriage. A voice was heard from behind it. Turned out to be the fourth princess, Dololea Ina Castor. The future empress was born in poor health and could not get out of bed, but for some reason everything changed and the rumors of recovery were true. The brunette stepped forward and, bending down, asked Her Highness how she got to the city and how the trip went. The woman was more angry than ever. She did not understand why the Grand Duke did not marry her. Previously, Ferashati thought that it was a one-sided wedding which the emperor insisted on, but it became clear that Her Highness was the initiator. The blonde spoke loudly, declaring that Terdeo was her man, and hearing this, Shasha accidentally gasped. Noticing the girl, the princess began to scream that she didn't even want to see her anymore. Sertia appeared in time. It was too noisy on the street. The redhead laughed, asking how many more people would come to harass a married man. The woman spoke directly, and Terdeo took advantage of this. He said that they were leaving and said goodbye. The blonde finally reminded him that she was not going to live without the young man. He would soon understand what was wrong. Ferashati didn't know how to react. She didn't know that the princess was so obsessed with the Duke. When the boys were already sitting in the carriage, the lady awkwardly thanked her husband, but he, remaining calm, asked her to give her thanks to her sister. La Furion came with an introduction. She heard that the curse on the girl does not work. This is an interesting detail. I wanted to ask about the meaning of marriage, but in order not to tell the truth, the man said that they fell in love with each other at first sight. The red-haired one didn't believe it. Everyone in the empire understood perfectly well that the hasty wedding was necessary to avoid the will of the emperor. The emperor tried to convince him to marry the princess against his will, but in the end, everything turned out no better. The woman looked at the young man, hoping that he would say at least something, but the brunette turned away and remained silent. While they were in silence, the heroine couldn't help but notice that the people from the La Furion family only wore tight-fitting suits. The girl wanted to open the window and accidentally fell back, hitting the man right on the nose. His sister could not hold back and started laughing. Terdeo's wife was funny, but because of her La Furion now looked stupid, it didn't change anything. The carriage arrived at the castle. It was huge after all the beauty heard from the night that it was impossible to pass because of the excitement at the entrance. Cepheus, the heir of the La Furion family, returned. The girl did not understand what happened. Terdeo decided to go out and promised that he would return very soon. He needed to talk to the boy properly. Schiff was standing near the entrance, shouting that he knew Ferashati was in the carriage and that he needed to discuss something with her. When Sir didn't listen to Cepheus, he grabbed his sword and ran forward to stop the boy. The brunette appeared in time, grabbed the young man by the hand and pulled him back. His excellency made him surprised. Ferashati came outside and walked forward resolutely. The man immediately became happy and began to ask that they talk anyway. The privates form a procession before the events. The young man invited the beauty to come and look at him. The woman asked that the knight be taken away, and at the Duke's command he was dragged away. He still could not remain silent. As they headed back to the carriage, Terdeo asked if it was true that this man could become a murderer in the future. In the evening, the man said that he would go and talk to Cepheus, but left the girl alone with the butler and servants. The heroine did not understand why the boy did this during the day. Now she is afraid to look her new family in the eyes. For some reason, the lady had previously heard that the heir of La Furion was recuperating on the outskirts, but returned. During dinner, the lady asked her husband questions. The child did not want to eat, so he did not come down. It is impossible that a Grand Duke who had been married for only 2 months could have such a grown-up child, but they look very similar. The girl assumed that Cepheus was an illegitimate child, but she was told that he was the son of the Grand Duke's brother. The man takes care of the boy. His brother, as it turned out, died. His wife left Cepheus and ran away. Then he was adopted. The lady did not expect to hear such a story, no matter how it was hidden. It was strange that all this remained a secret. In any case, there is no need to worry about the young man. Cepheus will go back to the countryside. The woman decided to leave first, and the maid hurried after her, not wanting to leave her mistress completely alone. The heroine once went through similar problems. She wants to hope that everything will be fine with the child. Walking down the corridor, the girl saw a maid with a cart with food. The boy was brought dinner, but he refused to open the door. The heroine felt strange. If Schiff hadn't appeared in the yard, he wouldn't have been scolded and everything would have been fine. Having decided to take the right step, the beauty went inside and greeted the boy who was sitting on the bed. The brunette thought that everything didn't end very well. Most likely, the lady came only so that the Duke would consider her good. The young man's eyes were swollen. The girl realized that he had been crying for a long time. She apologized for the fact that everything turned out this way. Of course, Cepheus didn't react as expected. He pushed the girl out the door and asked her to never show interest in him again. Her Highness was met by the maids. They did not ask what had happened, but reminded her about her wedding night. The bathroom was already ready. Her thoughts were in such disarray that the girl forgot about everything. The lady was a little worried, but reminded herself that they had a contract and the Duke was not interested in women. While she was thinking, she didn't notice at all that La Furion entered the room. The beauty was still a little confused about what she was saying. She asked if the young man was surprised by her presence. The heroine was about to go to another room, but she was stopped. There was no point in the wedding if they were not together. The rumor of the wedding night must spread so that after the end of the contract, the Duke can show how much he yearns. Then he will not be forced to marry the princess. The girl realized that she couldn't get out of it. She asked where she should sleep. There was a sofa in the room, but it would be better to sleep on the bed. Ferashati couldn't help but notice that even before going to bed, the hero puts on gloves. Despite being terribly tired, I couldn't fall asleep. My head was literally about to burst from the thoughts. The man noticed that it seemed that his sister liked the woman, and the title of Duke had originally belonged to her. Because of the curse, the girl lost her entire family and fell into madness in such a state she could not do work. She renounced her title of her own free will and did not appear in public for over a year. The young man must have decided to tell the story because he was worried about the beauty and what happened during the day. Instead of understanding, the woman only felt an even stranger feeling inside her chest. Everything that was happening was just for the sake of revenge on her former family, but the beauty thought that perhaps she had been too hasty. Virgo began to doubt even the fact that she had returned to the past. She began to think that a series of coincidences was following her. I had a nightmare that night. Schiff was standing next to Reina and smiling, saying that he was waiting for his wife to die. The stepmother joined in their laughter, reminding them that it was the Count who put the noose around his daughter's neck when he gave everything to her alone. Ferashati jumped up in bed. The Duke asked if she was okay and gently touched her shoulder. The butler ran into the room to say something, but noticing the situation they were in, he immediately apologized and ran out. He asked Cepheus to go out too. Although the baby, on the contrary, came with him, the maids were surprised. It was only after a few seconds that the lady realized the position they were in, the two almost hugging each other while sitting on the bed. At breakfast, the heroine was silent. She realized that she had made a mistake, so it was better to sit and keep a low profile so as not to cause problems. The man kept shouting at the Duke, accusing him of having played the wedding without his own will. The hero's face was slightly scratched, and he was even accused of this since one cannot appear near the emperor in such a state. Instead of objecting, Terdeo said that they should prepare the carriage because Cepheus was leaving for the villa. The brunette asked for forgiveness for what happened. He didn't want to attack the knight. He was just a little angry. The gentleman looked menacingly into his eyes. He had already said that if the baby were to get hurt, the secret of their family would be revealed. The boy turned away sadly, wanting to ask why he had been adopted at all if he would end up being abandoned. When the young gentleman left the room, the woman remarked that he could have waited until the end of breakfast, but he still hadn't eaten. Instead of answering, the hero stated that the Duchess was not used to the estate, so she needed to be shown the surroundings. The man decided to formally introduce himself. His name is Baha Moulton, and he is the Duke's assistant. The Viscount apologized for not behaving very tactfully. He made a whole scene this morning. Soon, they went down the corridor. The young man pointed to each room. It turned out that the Duke had gone to see the Emperor. The girl finally found the courage to ask if His Highness disliked Selfie. Baca explained that the man didn't hate him, but rather was worried about him. The Moulton family had been serving the master for a long time, so they knew about their circumstances. Blue-Eyed heard that Farashati also knew the family secret. The lady nodded. It turned out that the boy's poison was stronger than that of other family members, and his uncle sent him to the village so that he would not have contact with people and could rest. As they walked towards the garden, the lady couldn't stop asking questions in her head. Even while taking care of the child, her husband shows it wrong. Everyone says that what is happening is only for Selfie, but for him, on the contrary, it is a lot of stress. A maid ran out of one of the rooms. It turned out that there was a boy there, and because of the way he was smashing the furniture, he was badly injured. Moulton immediately ordered to contact His Excellency. He probably hadn't reached the palace yet. Farashati, without thinking twice, intervened. She asked to check if the maid was hurt. She would go inside herself. The Viscount tried to object, but there was no point. He was close to the gentleman, so he should have heard the Duchess's story. The girl went inside, but almost immediately some object flew into her head. The young man did not understand how the lady appeared next to him. Selfie hid under the blanket and again reminded that he asked not to show any attention to him. The girl explained that she was doing this for other reasons. She had only come to treat the wounds. While the boy wanted to push the girl away, he accidentally noticed blood on her head. He asked her not to tell her uncle so that he would not kick him out. Before entering, the lady put on gloves so she could now easily bandage her hand. The child's condition was strange. If he so strongly did not want to return to the villa, the heroine suggested trying to convince the gentleman. The boy asked not to do this. He was useless anyway, and this was known due to the constant gossip from the servants. The woman started screaming. It was Selfie who helped her drive away that nasty night, thus doing her a favor. She tried to explain that he needed to be calmer, that nothing would come of the guy mutilating his body. The lady almost stopped the blood on her forehead, but eventually it started flowing again. The hero noticed it sooner, so he reached out his hand to try to cover it. The girl suddenly felt something strange. The guy's blood did not get into her mouth, but maybe through the wound. She bent over and fell onto the bed. It was clear that she couldn't lose consciousness so as not to frighten the young man, but nothing worked. After a while, her eyes opened. Moulton, Selfie, and even the Duke were nearby. When asked about her health, the lady assured that she was fine. It all happened because of the poison. As the Viscount said, the boy is much more dangerous than even his uncle. The beauty looked around and admitted that in any case it was good that she at least remained alive. The gentleman reminded the boy that he had already said many times that the lady was not dead. The reason was unknown, but their poison had no effect on her. The brunette was angry at his wife. His blood had no effect on her, but no one knew what would happen upon contact with Selfie. The young man turned to the boy again. He must now have realized that any wrong move could lead to problems. It turned out that the child was crying. Of course, he agreed His Excellency was right. He was too careless. The Leferian family should be dealing with their own problems, but for some reason the lady intervened. She asked the boy to say what he wanted. The hero would probably need someone who could look after him. Farashati said that any mistake would remain only on the Duke's conscience for not being able to train properly. That's true. The hero shouldn't have to keep the boy locked up for the rest of his life. He actually deserves much better treatment. Baca suddenly intervened as well. Of course, it would be nice to listen to the Duchess. She has her own opinion, and it should be taken into account. Selfius wants to stay in the estate, and to prevent him from harming anyone, he needs to be looked after and guided if necessary. The brunette did not hesitate. There was no guarantee that what had happened would not happen again, and next time the woman might not pull through. While the girl was trying to explain herself, Selfie stepped forward and said that he really wanted to stay in the estate. The hero exhaled. He even thought for a second about what he would have to do and whether he should agree. Still, the man asked if the boy needed to pick up some things from the country house, and the brunette shook his head. The Viscount was asked to prepare everything necessary in the bedroom so that the young man could remain close to the Duke. When the two left, the man asked why Farashati was showing such concern in such a situation. She was just remembering the past. The girl didn't know what could be considered correct, but looking at the happy baby, she couldn't be mistaken. Still, the heroine was a little scared that she could die at any moment. She decided to get rid of bad habits and be as careful as possible. A couple of days later, guests came to visit the Duchess. They showed up early in the morning, which was unpleasant for the girl. After what happened to Selfie, the lady had to make a lot of efforts to get used to the duties of the Grand Duchess. As expected, many of the servants did not like the new Duchess. Only Moulton helped the girl in many ways. The heroine thought that later, when she met him, she would need to ask him in passing about the affairs of the Count Zakhart family. As it turned out, the gentleman really did return to the estate in the capital only to talk to the emperor, but he is almost always absent. The truth about the curse is known only to Bach. None of the servants had any idea why the woman appeared in the family. The lady herself did not understand why the poison did not affect her. Even if the maiden had questions, the Duke returned so late that it was impossible to ask them. The heroine found her advantages. The estate's sofa felt nicer than the bed in the Count's estate. You could even sleep on it. The girl went down to the first floor where her stepmother and Reina were already waiting for her. There were too many eyes around, so they had to be let in. Still, the heroine was a little afraid, even though this was the Duke's estate, but they were trying to kill a woman, so it was unknown what to expect. Farashati frowned and asked why the family had come to the castle. Of course, their pride was hurt, but still, the lady could not restrain herself. She began to cry and ask for forgiveness after her daughter left. She thought about many things. The beauty did not understand how to react. She assumed that it was just acting. Pretending to accidentally knock over a cup of tea, the heroine accidentally burned her hand. She caringly asked if everything was okay with Zakhart. Farashati actually realized that she was no longer sure that she was crazy. Perhaps what was happening was just in her head. What is happening is like a nightmare that repeats itself every night. Now the thoughts in my head are completely mixed up. The maids were cleaning and discussing. They saw that the mistress's family had arrived. They looked fierce, more like enemies. Apparently, the rumors were true. One of the girls did not understand what they were talking about because apparently she missed something. It is said that Her Highness expelled her family in order to take sole possession of the entire fortune. It is not clear why the Duchess needs this, but she was strange from the start, and not even a week had passed before she began to dig into La Ferraille's affairs. Many say that in fact the lady seduced the Duke with her pretty face, but she has nothing else. In the hall, Reina began asking questions instead of her mother. She wanted to know when her sister met La Ferraille. All high society is talking about how Farashati kicked out her family in order to take over the entire inheritance and not share it. Although the ceremony was magnificent, it was somehow too ordinary. Of course, Terdeo is great, but he neglects his wife. The man should at least give a dowry. The sister began to ask for a second chance. They would like to return back to the estate. There was a feeling of pressure in her chest, and it became more difficult for the lady while she did not understand what to do. Cepheus entered the room and intervened. It turns out that these two came for money. An attempt to undermine the authority of His Excellency will not work. The brunette asked if the guests had done anything. The woman continued to play her role and said that she had simply come to visit her daughter. However, the girl reported that she felt a little unwell, but as soon as they left, it immediately became easier to breathe. Selfie immediately apologized. Perhaps it was rude of him, but he overheard the conversation, so it seemed that help was needed. No matter how much Farashati thought about it, returning to the past does not seem like a simple dream to her. It is all too complicated to understand. As the two walked down the corridor, the boy decided to help them unwind a little. He asked if the lady knew about the festival that would take place soon. His Excellency played a key role in winning the war, so an event will be held in his honor. The girl herself remembered that every spring the Castor Empire held a festival in honor of the empire's prosperity and victory. Everything felt exactly like a simple dream again. The heroine remembered very well how she had a fun time with Schiff. The boy did not understand why it was necessary to invest such a meaning into the day. War is always terrible, and it had ended long ago. The woman understood the baby's feelings, but she also knew that it was better not to speak ill of the ruler. Deciding to change the subject, the lady asked whether the boy had managed to arrange his quarters. He nodded in agreement and suggested calling him Selfie. The lady could not stop thinking about the festival. It meant a lot to her because the day of her death fell on the last day of the procession. After talking with the ruler, the Duke, as usual, did not feel very well. He knew where this was leading. The princess sent a whole stack of letters again, and it became clear that the wedding had had no effect. Something happened again in the royal castle. Lafreyon realized that he would have to delay his return to his estate a little. Moulton reported that the Grand Duchess was doing well. He was surprised when she decided to take on the responsibility of running the business, but she was doing well. In the morning, the woman was visited by her family. It seems that nothing serious happened. They eventually left on their own. Baka asked if the gentleman was going to get divorced again. He understands everything, so he gives advice on how to behave, so that everything is plausible. A newspaper with an interesting article fell into his hands after reading everything the man ordered, that the distribution be stopped. The brunette is still suffering from insomnia, and they promised to prepare a slightly different tea, which this time would be much better. The hero came back to his chambers. His wife was already sleeping there. Her face still looked worried, as if she had had another nightmare. Having moved the body onto the bed, the man was about to leave, but hearing quiet pleas for help, he decided to try to calm her down. When the lady woke up in the morning, the first thing she realized was that something was wrong because she was on the bed. There was an awkward moment at breakfast, and it turned out that no one had driven the Grand Duke away, but something had obviously happened to him. For some reason, the hero ordered to sleep with him and from now on to call him only by his name instead of his title. The gentleman turned to Selfie. The boy still lives in the capital. It would be possible to go to the academy then. Of course, the young man was given the right to choose, but he nodded and agreed to go to study. The boy just didn't understand why there was such kindness. The Duke himself said that the academy was under strict prohibition. There were worries about killing someone, but Moulton advised just to be careful and carry a means to stop the bleeding. It was decided that the hero would follow all the recommendations and then be able to go to training. Of course, the guy was happy and even showed it. It was immediately obvious that he really wanted to walk and be surrounded by people. After breakfast, the Grand Duchess was met by a new maid who introduced herself as Rebecca Knights. It's strange that the girl volunteered, but it would still be nice if she helped. Dark-eyed almost immediately declared that she was glad to be her ladyship's servant. It seemed to her that they would choose a lady from a more prosperous family. Rebecca has been informed of everything and is now asking if there is anything she can help with. The maids reported that the Duchess had business outside the castle, and the woman had to prepare for departure. Because of the nightmares, the lady did not get enough sleep and was tired. Someday she would have to face her family again, and she could not allow herself to fall into confusion every time. The first thing they did was arrange a meeting about grain. They had a crisis, but everything worked out. The lady suggested reducing the price of the remaining grain. One of the men refused. The prices are too sensitive. They cannot dispose of them arbitrarily. The maid came running. It turned out that Moulton would have to leave as he had urgent business elsewhere. Baka was asked why he was involving the Grand Duchess in the matter, but instead of answering, he asked to be led. In the carriage, Rebecca still asked a question. She was still curious about the purpose of the chest that was always with them. Inside was a donation for the temple. Lafreyon secretly made many donations. There was some secret behind it. The festival hadn't even started yet, but the streets were already noisy, perhaps due to the active preparations. There were a lot of vendors there. The woman had to ask about the curse that Schiff had mentioned. The only thing was that she was afraid that she would be mistaken for a person interested in dark magic. The abbot of the temple trusts the Duke that if a man's wife seems strange, it will only reflect on her. The girl thought about how she could turn everything to her advantage. In the temple, she asked the priests about one book. Upon seeing the title, cries immediately began to rain down that witchcraft only exists on paper, but in reality it is a relic of the past. When one of the guys started talking some nonsense about God's punishment, another man hit him to shut him up. The girl had to play dumb, but she never found out anything because she was escorted out into the street as soon as the visit was over. Farashati came to the conclusion that it was better for her to remain silent. She could not ask her husband if he sold his blood as poison. The knight of the guard watched the lady. The master entrusted him with the protection of the beauty. The man said that his wife was extremely important to him. The young man assumed that His Excellency had asked him to watch her every step, since she was after all a bit of a strange person. The next stop of the carriage was a cafe with beautiful desserts in the form of fish. The lady could not return empty-handed. Her Highness learned that Rebecca was a little late, but suddenly she saw something in the distance of the street, which made her jump up. Circia was just in the city. It seemed to her that her husband and her child, who had not been with her for a long time, were walking ahead. She did not notice that she was running ahead on the road and almost got into danger. At the last moment, Farashati was able to run out after her and managed to catch her. The lady did not even immediately realize that it was her husband's sister in front of her. It was lucky that everything ended well. Looking around, the red-eyed girl realized that she had imagined everything again. Those two were strangers. The people around began to whisper, realizing that an aristocrat was in front of them. Zahart quickly put a cap on the lady's head. The woman decided to go further away so as not to attract further attention. The heroine still decided to go to that coffee shop with fish. They almost immediately returned home to finish the rest of their business. Everyone knew that the festival was approaching, which meant that there were only more tasks. The woman still continued to think about the incident with Circia. The lady looked worried, but did not say why she suddenly ran onto the road. At home, Her Highness said that the hat had been blown away by the wind. Sitting in the room, the lady was thinking until Cepheus came running. The woman said that she accidentally fell, but her hand was fine, even if it was a little hurt. The brunette decided to ask if they could go to the festival together. Of course, the lady nodded and apologized for not suggesting it first. In the evening, the Duke returned again. It became noticeable that lately he had been coming too early. One of the knights informed him about the incident of the day. The woman didn't want them to discuss what had happened, so she asked about something else, that they could go to register at the academy together. Moulton was going to go instead of the Duke. Of course, it would have been better to go himself, but for him this was not an argument. The lady thought that the man went to the academy, but it turned out that this was not the case. Perhaps he just had a personal teacher because of the curse. The hero did not tell the details because he did not consider it important. He said that he was looking for a lawyer who would help the lady. It would be much better that way. It was gradually getting darker. It was time to rest. Farashati asked that today His Excellency sleep on the bed. Tomorrow the weather outside was fine, as if someone was being blessed for a good start. Selphie was informed that unfortunately they would not be going with the Duke. The girl noticed that the boy's face was suspiciously red. She realized that he had a fever, probably a common cold. In the morning, the lady could not help but go to the meeting with the Duke. It was impossible to reschedule the meeting after all. The beauty had a not very good feeling. Rebecca, standing in front of the lawyer's office, turned to the lady. She was having a little difficulty. She did not understand what they said. You can receive an inheritance and deprive your family of any money only on 3 points, which are not suitable, as in the case of rumors. A girl cannot know. In the future, it is better for her to prepare for everything in advance. It's not time to start a relationship with men yet, but perhaps it's worth meeting with one of her friends. Her Highness decided to make a rough plan for herself. The gentleman's carriage was late. He was probably making his rounds because there were a lot of people. That's why he was delayed in the end. Everything should be fine. One of the knights reported that because a large stone statue of the emperor had been built, too many people had gathered there. The woman remembered that in the past, Schiff had taken her to this very building which had collapsed, but now there were only stones lying around on the street. It's good that the explosion didn't affect people, but it's still sad that it turned out this way. A security team should have arrived soon. The woman was sure of what would happen next after the collapse of the statue. Breaking news about what happened began to come out. For some reason, my heart started to hurt again. Just like then, everything was exactly the same, which means that this is definitely the past and not delusions in my head. Her Highness almost wanted to cry, because finally she got confidence. Rebecca asked if everything was okay. In the past life, the newspaper headlines were about La Ferraillon, but what changed was that now the lady was his dear wife. Farashati could have gone home almost immediately, but she refused. She could not let Cepheus down, thereby not keeping her promise. It was really nice weather outside. Everything was fine until the moment the lady saw the princess, who turned around as soon as she noticed Farashati. It wasn't just Selfie who was promised a new beginning, because the heroine was also supposed to have a good start. The Delphinil Academy has a high reputation in the capital, with descendants of the imperial family and children of famous aristocratic families attending. The woman had absolutely no idea that she would be able to meet the emperor's fourth daughter there, but now they were sitting at the table with tea and sweets in front of them. Apparently, the blonde came to pick up her sister from the academy. Most likely she is still angry at Farashati for what happened. The wedding was not the best decision. One of the ladies said that children avoid this place, so they should not go the other way. The brunette did not think to meet Lafirion's wife. On the way to the place, the woman saw scattered sheets of paper. These were articles about His Majesty's wife. The article was written a little roughly, but still. The heroine bowed her head. She realized that if they knew at the academy, then everyone in the capital already knew there was nothing to hope for. The princess regrets. But the article turned out to be a benefit for her, because she had long wanted to invite Zakhart to the imperial palace. The ladies asked if they would like to invite them too. The woman did not understand how she should behave in this situation. There was probably a hidden meaning there. The green-eyed one said that if the beauty responded to the invitation, then they would gratefully catch everyone who mocked the article. Farashati did not want everyone involved in this story to be punished, so she refused. She decided to leave because it was late enough to stay. The princess sighed sadly, according to her. She wanted to talk about many things, but nothing came of it. Silence hung in the room. It seemed as if the atmosphere had changed since that time, but only for the worse. The woman understood that nothing good was in store for her. After school, Selfie came out and apologized for being late. There was more to do than expected. The boy feels great. He said that the illness has almost passed. He smiled because his deception was not revealed. For some reason, the Duke appeared in the courtyard of the academy. The girl called him by name because she remembered this request and asked what he forgot near the school. The man said he had his own motives. He approached the boy and asked how he was doing. He replied that he liked everything about the day. The girl was surprised. It became clear that the man came for Selfie, even though he said something else, but it still seemed like he was worried about him. His successes were important. There was silence until the hero reached out to touch the boy's forehead. He immediately realized that he had a fever. Now it was clear why his face was so red. The boy screamed that he just had a cold. He turned around and ran away, because if they came for the lady, she no longer needed the carriage. Rebecca rode with the knights, so there was silence in the carriage. It was a little awkward to be alone like this. The young man spoke first. He had seen the article. The original issue was supposed to be about divorce, but since the man had blocked it, apparently it had become a problem. The brunette was ashamed that everything ended this way. The girl asked if this was the same person who was guilty of destroying the stone statue. Since these events happened simultaneously, it will be difficult to figure out which two groups planned it. The heroine asked if the man was okay. The two statues stood together, but it was the Duke who was destroyed while His Majesty was safe and sound. The man really looked as if nothing had happened, exactly the same expression he had when the girl accidentally hurt his hand. After seeing how he behaved with Selphius, the girl realized that her husband had another side. In fact, he was much more compassionate than she thought. At first, she thought he was like that because he was keeping some family secrets, but he could be completely different than what the rumors say. The woman looked into the gentleman's eyes. They seemed to have become different, to shine with different colors. The hero decided to ask what the lady wanted to tell him, but having finally made up her mind, Farashati said that the emperor's daughter had invited her to the palace. It was very quiet in the Lafirion estate, all because, with the exception of a few workers, everyone was on vacation. Rebecca and the maid were also on holiday. The day they left was the first time the lady saw smiles. It must have been nice to have a rest. The Archduke also advised going to the villa. He said that the extra classes were exhausting, so it was better to rest. Farashati refused under the circumstances. She did not want to be told what was happening, since in the castle she could quickly contact a lawyer. As the number of workers dwindled, the girl also frequently encountered the mansion's manager, whom she usually did not see. Baron Moulton's eldest son was too tired to communicate properly, and his father asked if everything was okay. As the lady was leaving, she heard the two of them arguing. The guy didn't want all the work to fall on him, but this didn't bother Buck. When Farashati went to see Selfie, it turned out that Circia had already arrived there, and she started to hug him. Selphia smiled as soon as he saw Her Majesty. They hadn't seen each other for quite some time precisely because of all the accumulated work. Returning to the mansion after registering at the academy, the malarial was isolated from outsiders in order to calmly recover from his illness. The semester began, but he was allowed to miss classes until his condition improved, and the Duke moved all his work home so that he could always be close by. Farashati was not allowed to visit the young man because she did not want to get sick. The woman was warned to be more careful. The girl nevertheless broke the ban. She came to visit the boy and asked what he would like to eat. It turned out to be strawberry pie. Returning to her husband, the lady asked if they could take turns looking after the child. But again, it turned out that it was impossible. Nothing could be done. No one knew why the boy was sick. It turned out that my uncle would arrive soon. He is a family doctor. He will need to show Selfie's condition to assess what to do next. Circia promised that she would be with Lafarion at all times so that the married couple could go back to their business. When the two found themselves in the corridor, the woman reported that the princess continued to write her letters. She was again asked to ignore them because the situation would not lead anywhere. Farashati did not know whether it was right to behave like this with a member of the imperial family, but she decided that she would leave this matter to her husband because he would sort everything out himself. The girl didn't quite understand why the family doctor hadn't lifted the curse from the Lafarion family. She needed to ask to understand. It had been a long time since the man had left to visit his uncle. The Duke was a little late, considering that it was already dark outside. The maiden knocked on the door. She asked if Circe was in the room. The boy asked to eat strawberry pie, so it was better to leave the tray at the door. There was a cough behind the door. When the girl entered, she froze because the young man was coughing up blood. There were scarlet spots everywhere. The woman almost immediately started screaming, asking what happened. It seemed to her that everything had returned to normal, but she was very wrong. Circia sternly ordered not to come closer if the beauty had not forgotten. Then the blood is poisonous and can even kill a person. No one knows how this can end. Everyone in the Lafarion family periodically experiences this torment. If you endure it a little, then everything will pass and be fine. The girl was asked to leave, but Farashati said that she could not go about her business peacefully when the child was so ill. There had to be a way, but it was all too complicated. A voice was heard, and then the door opened. Someone entered the room. It turned out that the uncle arrived just in time. He unpacked his suitcase with various medicines. Greetings could be said later. The Duke helped the girl up. She kept asking if the boy would get better, but they didn't listen and simply asked to be taken out the door so that everything would be okay. While Terdeo was opening the door, the beauty still couldn't come to her senses. Everything seemed to be mixed up. Perhaps everything was that bad. The heroin almost fell. She suddenly felt as if her legs stopped working as they should. She tried to pull herself together. She asked her husband again if everything would be okay. Uncle came, which means he will reduce the pain. It turned out that there is a way to ease what is happening, which means Selfie will be fine. Farashati couldn't hold back and started screaming, asking why they didn't tell her right away, perhaps, because she was obviously superfluous in the new family. The workers also leave. For some reason, the heroine began to think that it was for this reason that the Duke sent his nephew to the countryside. When the lady had put herself in order, Circia came to her and reported that Selphius's condition had improved and that everything would be fine now. The red-eyed woman suggested a little drink to relieve stress. She explained that fever is a harbinger of horror. The woman hoped that everything would pass, but in the end, everything turned out the opposite. The lady hoped to break the bridle of the curse, but everything went downhill. The curse does not pass through the maternal line. It only passes from men. If a girl had been appointed as the head of the family in advance, everything would have been fine. Farashati realized that if the women of the Lafarion family gave birth to children from other men, they had a chance. The red-eyed woman noticed that what was happening was even funny. They were more afraid of making a woman the head of the family than the curse itself. Even though there is a way to break the link, the tedious creators cast a curse when the heir brother died, forcing the next chapter to be established. In order for the child to see the future, Circia wanted to take over the title starting with her son. The woman wanted to create a family without a curse. She wanted everything to be normal. The girl remembered that her husband told her the story of his sister and said that because the woman lost her family, she went crazy. The girl's family died because of her. Initially, I wanted to think that everything would be fine, but everything ended sadly. Before everything happened, the lady said that it was normal for her to wear gloves every day. The baby took off the glove, asking to leave it like that for just a couple of minutes. That day, the woman accidentally touched a thing standing nearby, which caused her to cut her finger. When it turned out that this served as a turning point in her life, she could not stop screaming because she had lost absolutely everything. Initially, Circia treated Farashati with suspicion. It was difficult to believe that the curse itself was transmitted, even knowing the secret the lady came to the one who could kill her. Red-eyed realized that she was wrong about her brother's wife. Everything was shown when she was so worried being next to Celsius. Now the heroine is grateful that she saved her on the street back then. She hoped that their relationship would only get better from now on. Schiff visited the annex where the Zahart family was located. He reported that his ex-wife did not attend the procession of knights, which she was asked to come to. The stepmother snorted. For her, the issues related to ordinary knights were not so important now because there were much bigger problems. The woman found out that a person had been assigned to them. The daughters suspected something, so they all should be extremely careful in their actions. Baka's son had been thinking since the morning about what had happened to the young master. No matter how many times they were restored, in the end, the result would be the same. That day, I didn't breathe at all, as if I was dead. Even during death, the pain will be exactly the same, but it will only make the situation worse. Baha declared the boy to be ignorant and turned away. In fact, he was worried that even if the Duke was so busy, he could at least care a little about it. In the morning, Farashati asked if the young man would be okay. The gentleman said that he had been transferred to another room. They went somewhere. That night, the man never returned to his chambers to his wife. The girl thought that it was even better that they did not run into each other, but now it was uncomfortable to be together. The hero still apologized. He should have said it earlier without trying to hide anything. The beauty nodded. She could not somehow resist. Selfie is a friend to the woman, that's why she was so worried about him. He was the first one to stand by her side when she first came to the estate. The heroine would like to do everything to make the young man happy, but when she saw him in a terrible state, she was probably more self-confident. When the two entered the room, they approached the boy's bed. He began to whisper something, but realizing that the Duke was nearby, he immediately tried to jump up. Farashati asked how the child was feeling. He said that everything was fine, but also apologized because it was obvious that the lady was disgusted to see what happened. The woman tried to object, but the hero closed himself under the blanket. The Duke advised to leave the boy alone. They left. Previously, no one had seen those moments when Selfie was especially ill. Terdeo said that the child would be fine once he got over the illness and went to the academy. After all this, there was a meeting with the doctor. Because of the chaos, they did not introduce themselves. It turned out that his name was Phoenix. The man greeted the lady. The lady almost immediately noticed that all the members of the Lefarion family were somehow even similar. They decided to immediately get down to business so as not to just chat. Phoenix hasn't studied Her Highness yet, but he assumes that she has antibodies in her blood. He only examined the tests, but nothing more. Having received the result, the man could confidently say that everything was not so simple. In the laboratory, they made a comparison with normal blood and conducted an analysis of the reaction of the antigen to antibodies. Nothing was found. The girl gasped. She realized that she was absolutely no different from ordinary people. Everything was the same. The composition is normal and nothing was found in this situation. It is unknown why the poison does not affect the beauty. Everything is too confusing. Phoenix has not had the opportunity to examine the woman personally, so he asks if she can remain in the capital to examine the body up close. Uncle would be using the room next to Selfie and hoped for further interaction. Serja nodded. She asked to let him know as soon as there was any news. After 3 days, all the workers returned from vacation and were ordered to get back to work almost immediately so as not to waste more time. Rebecca was the only one who asked how the lady was doing. There was a tired smile on the beauty's face. Something had clearly happened, and it was strange. The girl said that the vacation went well along the way. The streets were buzzing because of the holidays, thanks to which it was only even more fun. Even to the good news, the woman reacted in exactly the same way. The maid suggested going to watch the celebration with her. The day before Farashati met with her friends for the first time since the wedding, they did not understand why the girl did not tell them about her plans. Despite everything, the girls congratulated the Duchess. For them, the story was more than romantic, even breathtaking. The girl could not control herself because of the huge number of friends. The woman had never heard information about social circles. She only knew that her stepmother visited them. Still, the lady was happy that the girls were talking to her as usual. Now the beauty suggested going for a walk. Rebecca was happy that they didn't go back. Knight suggested going to a nearby store and buying a gift for the young gentleman. The girl didn't think she could find anything. After some time, the lady found the perfect option for her. It was a pen with a nib, a beautiful color that would suit the boy. Finally, Selfie returned to his normal state so he can calmly return to the academy and use his pen there. When they were about to go home, the woman thought about everything again. It would be great if the boy was happy. All that was left was to resolve the situation with the Grand Duke. We had to try to start a conversation, otherwise nothing would ever change. Rebecca approached the lady. She just wanted to inform her that His Excellency was working somewhere nearby, so he seemed to be calling the Knights. Knights didn't mean to be rude, but it seemed as if the girl was uncomfortable with the small talk. She had a friend who knew high society well. Perhaps they needed to meet so that he could somehow help her adapt. They went to the meeting, but for some reason when they arrived at the appointed place, there was no one there. It's a pity that everything turned out this way. The woman knew that she had to take care of her reputation, as she understood no one cares about emergency events, but there is no need to rush. While the heroine was lost in thought, she did not notice how the maid had disappeared somewhere, and the lady who stood in front of her seemed to have evaporated. The knight said that in search of a friend, the red-haired woman went to the side. When the lady turned into a corner, she froze in front of her. Stood the man who held Knights. 10 minutes later, the girl was sitting tied up. While the maid and her bodyguard were knocked out, she didn't immediately understand where they were. It turned out that Schiff was behind this. He told his assistants that they had skillfully bypassed the guards who had no idea what was going on. Some were worried that the rumors that the Duke loved his wife might be true, and then they would all be in trouble. Even when the heroine screamed, no one came. The narrow space was not enough for one knight to fight back. Schiff approached. He had been waiting for a meeting with Farashati for a very long time. She was not the only one who had the right to assign surveillance. Everything was quite logical. The woman didn't quite understand what all this meant, and she was ordered to remain silent because otherwise Knights would most likely be killed. The girl asked to let the other people go, but this is not what she should have said. The man wanted to know why the lady left him. The beauty was silent at first, but then abruptly declared that she knew about the murder after the wedding. Even if this was true, the knight believed that it would be the lady's own fault. The brunette knew that his ex would meet the fair-haired guy. Most likely he was her new lover, and therefore he would pay. Obviously, the heroine has a penchant for cute faces, so the blue-eyed nobleman could immediately attract her. Even the Duke is unable to satisfy her desires. When Schiff took the knife and approached the gentleman, Zakhart began to scream. The girl asked what he needed and offered money or something else. The man wasn't really interested in the offer. He came up with a contract. They had to get married. As soon as the lady signed the contract, everyone would be released immediately. The girl immediately understood that it was about a divine oath. The annulment of the oath would require a lengthy trial in the current situation. Everything could end even worse. Schiff pulled himself out of his thoughts and handed over the paper. He was telling sweet words about how he loved Shasha and was only worried about her condition. It was he who stopped the Countess from killing her. The beauty had no choice against her will. The contract was signed in blood. The brunette grinned. It would have been even better if Zakhart had listened to him earlier. Suddenly someone hit the young man. He doesn't understand what's happening. There was a stomping sound and several more people appeared. When the girl opened her eyes, she realized that the Duke was standing in front of her, 10 minutes before the man met his first night on the street and asked him what he had forgotten there. The squad reported that they had been told that the master had called them. The young man immediately realized that something was wrong and took off. His Excellency saved the girl and almost immediately asked what happened. Farashati only thanked him. She was afraid that everything would end badly. Shifa's scream was heard. He did not believe that the woman was able to get out in the end. The husband took his wife away and asked her not to think about this incident. When the two were home, the young man suggested that they rest a little. He said that a doctor would arrive very soon, which would help them cope with the situation a little. In the evening, lying on the bed, the lady asked how the man found her. It turned out that everything happened thanks to the help of the guards. They were nearby. Thanks to the glove, it was possible to find the bandits even faster. It was lying nearby. The woman nodded and asked Terdeo to leave because lately he was very busy. The girl wasn't hurt that badly. The heroine didn't understand why what happened was connected only to her compared to her family. The inheritance was a trifle. In her heart, the lady hoped that with time the family would regret what had happened. She wanted to believe that their desire to kill the girl was wrong. From the very beginning, no one loved the girl. She realized long ago that now life has changed even more. The young man was hit. His master was screaming. Apparently, he had forgotten that outside the duchy, orders were not valid without the Duke's seal. Turning to the gentleman, the captain asked him to entrust the protection of the Duchess into his hands. The brunette remained silent until he decided that he needed to answer something. The man repeatedly told the knights that the lady was indeed important, but in the end, things did not end so favorably. The hero could not forget that conversation when he had just freed Zahart. She said that she had signed a divine oath against her will. In the corridor near the mistress's chambers, there was a boy who asked Phoenix if he could come in. It turned out that now she only needed rest. She couldn't come in. Cepheus imagined that the woman had fallen ill because of his attack. Terdeo said that this was not so. Nothing happened that day. The situation happened later. Bacca sent people to the temple to find out about the contract, but they did not receive any news. They even searched in the alleys, but found nothing. Rebecca was in the Fortune estate. She was angry at Aeneas. The blue-eyed man recoiled. He did not understand why everything was hung on him. Knights was put in solitary confinement and will soon begin interrogation. Even for a short-term release, he had to sign a memorandum. Through prayers, the girl came to the estate. She was worried about the guy. They asked her to calm down, because if she behaves like this, she will only put him in a more difficult situation. Aeneas also doesn't understand why everything will turn out this way. The blonde was captured when he was waiting for knights, and as a result, everything ended unfavorably. It is impossible to convince the woman she and the lady were supposed to have a conversation. The man does not want to appear in front of the Duke. However, as a result, there is no choice. At first, it was surprising that the young man came to the scene, although it is logical because he needed to protect his wife from attack. The woman is grateful that they helped her get into the Duchess's estate, but if things continue like this, she will most likely be kicked out. They tried to convince Fortuna to go to the La Furion estate. The blonde was also confident in his refusal. He wanted to hear all the details without going anywhere. The knight intervened in the conversation. The Duke summoned Aeneas to the estate after his full recovery. The message was delivered. They were about to leave. Blue-eyed was left alone and began to remember the moment when Terdeo arrived to help. Something had changed in him. He was no longer the same person. After the death of her mother, the girl's father became completely weak, but nevertheless he did not leave the work entrusted to him by his wife. Farashati could not leave everything as it was because she understood that then all the work of her parents would be in vain. She did not want to be left with nothing. The lady did not want to give up. She was not weak. She went outside and saw Terdeo sitting in the carriage. It was strange that the man decided to go along. Initially, the lady was asked to stay in the estate, but she refused. She still wanted to go about her business. She had to check personally. The brunette did not pay enough attention to his wife, so it all ended with the signing of a sacred contract he decided to change. Wherever the treaty was, it was just a piece of paper, and the parties concerned were prepared to face the death penalty. The brunette said that Selfie told him that the girl bought him a gift, and he thought that he needed to buy something too. The lady was surprised and agreed to go along. She was not sure if it was okay to go outside and if it would be appropriate to be near the Duke. The girl was sure that the young man would like everything that was given to him. He would be more than happy to receive even a dessert in the form of fish. The hero looked at his wife and thought about what Phoenix had told him. It turned out that the woman's body was still axially weak. The beauty was told that she should rest because otherwise it would be even worse. The man listened but still decided that the lady would go with him. Every time they entered the store, at first the sellers were happy and offered to help, but then they became scared because they saw a Tardeo. There were a lot of people around each of them doing their own thing, but some were quite actively discussing the latest news. A man asked passers-by why they weren't more upset about the fact that the statue had been destroyed. Because of her husband's gait, the lady thought that he needed to disguise himself, but despite the fact that Lara threw a cape over him, it still didn't help much. The girl didn't know what to say. She and the Duke weren't even that close, but she still wanted to change something. Pulling the hero a little closer, the heroine said that he was too conspicuous. It would be much better to bend down so that he would not be noticed. After half a day, the woman realized that she was very tired. They bought glasses so that Tardeo's eyes could not be seen and also chose a good gift for selfie. They approached the main street where a large procession was supposed to take place right at the end of the event. In the past life, they were unable to get there because they and Schiff returned to the estate early. The Duke standing behind him declared that the girl must be with him when they took part. The heroine nodded as the master's wife. She should participate especially in a situation where he denied all the rumors about marrying the princess. The brunette wanted to say something. The imperial procession in honor of the closing of the festival begins closer to the evening so that more people can gather. In front are the emperor and his wife and members of the imperial family, Declan Ronan Castor always first, and then Crown Princess Daria Eden and her husband. The Duke's wife was supposed to walk behind the knight, volunteered to accompany her, and asked forgiveness for his ignorance in the past. The beauty greeted Raymond and noticed that in front next to the princess was her sister Reina. They were talking. It was very inopportune for the lady to see her at that moment. Since it was the procession of the imperial family, she did not think that they would see each other. Yesterday, Farashati's husband told her that the killers might appear right during the procession. This celebration is being held to catch the remaining rebels. They call themselves an army. Maybe they will come to kill the master. The woman will also be drawn into all this because of her status. The beauty tried not to think about anything, but she couldn't help but notice that people were getting too close, which could end up not very well. A man appeared in front of them who seemed to know Rebecca. A bomb was thrown in front of them. Everything happened too fast. The Duke fought back in time, and then Raymond threw the man to the ground, who screamed, not understanding how they were obliged to obey the imperial people. His Excellency promised that he would deal with the mercenary. Later, he did not want to disrupt the procession, but it was suspended. There was a risk of a repeat assassination attempt. It had to be stopped. The guard asked if the man was really going to disobey the emperor's order. His Majesty was already waiting. They were asked to continue the procession, but the lady saw that the attacker was more seriously wounded than expected, and she felt uneasy. Back at the estate, the lady kept wondering what happened to that man. There were fireworks outside. It was reminiscent of the moment when the lady died. The girl turned to her husband. She couldn't wait, so of course she decided to ask something. The man came up and nodded, agreeing to do it. His Excellency conducted an investigation into what happened. Some asked, what about the people killed? Because in the end, it is not that simple. The knights suffered greatly, and it was believed that the attacker had to be taken prisoner in the future. The trust in the Duke would fall significantly. Nothing could be done about it. They discussed the fact that even the statue of a great man was destroyed by the rebels, which seemed even more outrageous. Moulton ordered them to stop trying to talk, but then it all continued. The imperial family had no conscience with how they behaved. Count Zahart initially had an inclination because of the death of the countess. Before the wedding, the master ordered an investigation into the family of the future wife. Moulton appeared again as if out of nowhere. He reminded that the subordinates had already complained that there was too much work, but for some reason now they continued to talk. 3 people, including the ringleader, were executed, while the rest were sent across the border to hard labor. Since the customer had also been caught, there was nothing more to worry about, and the gentleman was asked to report the news to the Grand Duke. The servants were ordered to ensure that no one outside the estate knew about the problem, so they had better watch their tongues. Baka noticed that the lady was learning quite quickly. It seemed that now the mansion did not need his son because the girl could do everything herself. The lady went out into the corridor. She realized that it would start raining very soon. She still needed to finish some paperwork. A voice was heard, and then Selfie greeted the girl. The boy had to leave already, so he quickly said goodbye and got ready. The young man entered the academy and does not complain, despite the fact that he has to travel to school by carriage for more than an hour every day. Rebecca returned to her duties as soon as her punishment was over, taking into account how she had protected her mistress. The girl complained to the heroine that for several days in a row she was forced to write how she met Adias. The beauty listened and asked about her friend. He must have gotten hurt too, given all the circumstances. The woman started screaming that she wasn't interested in him. He didn't put in a good word for Knights and turned out to be not a real friend. Rumor has it that Fortune was curious to know about the Duchess, who had never appeared anywhere since her marriage. The man handed Baka some letter. It turned out that inside was a contract which he picked up in case the bandits wanted to take him back. The Duchess had only recently married, and he was unaware of her position in the family, which was why he was so careful, understanding why all this was necessary. Judging by the Viscount's words, Fortune worried in vain. Thanks to him, the problem with the contract was solved. It was simply burned so that there would be no more unnecessary questions. The lady decided that it seemed she would thank Adias after all. While she was thinking about it, her friend kept shouting that this man was not worthy of anything good in life. Whatever the reason for the meeting, the lady was worried that the two were also involved. She was lucky that everything worked out in the end. Gradually, the problems were resolved, but Farashotti did not understand how an ordinary knight managed to obtain such an expensive contract. After the attack during the procession, the Duke began to behave a little differently. He constantly disappeared and tried to find out the details of what happened. The girl asked if the young man found out the reason for the death of that mercenary. It was all strange. It was all because of the past. After that day, everything was not so right. After the festival, the heroine commented that it was strange that the man fell only because of a wound on his hand. His reaction when he fell was the same as the lady's when she died. The report was made almost immediately, stating that the killer had come from Schwartz. One of the knights then thought that the man had stopped breathing, but he said nothing. The sword in his hand was smeared with snake venom. Poison was also found on his molars. Usually such poisons are slow-acting, so it is strange that death occurred so quickly. Now the master told his wife that the mercenary did not die because of Lafarian's blood. The woman nodded but also understood that no matter what happened, he should not have died. The brunette believed that there was no one who could benefit from this. The hero seemed to understand that he was sure of this. The girl asked questions, and it caused aggression, as if there was a lot of uncertainty in her, as if she thought that the Lafarian family was profiting from their poisoned blood. I didn't want to ruin it. But still, if the lady died from the poison in the past, there is a leak. Maybe the reason why the blood doesn't work on Zahart is because she is already dead because of it. I would like to tell the story to my husband, but if I tell him, no one guarantees that he will believe it right away. The lady decided that since the hero came home so late, it meant that he probably also had doubts about this situation. Farashotti would be happy if she simply had delusions, but she worries that her guesses might be correct. A week had passed since the conversation before the brunette returned to the estate late, but now he didn't even come, perhaps remaining busy. Even at breakfast, the young man was absent. Selfie himself began to ask where His Excellency was, but the girl did not know what to answer. The lady still wanted to be wrong, but somehow blood was spread, and if that was the case, the heroine needed to prevent it. While the woman was thinking Rebecca distracted her, they were driving past Count Zahart's estate. The Duchess decided to stop by her uncle. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. The beauty suggested talking calmly. They didn't need formalities. When they were just the two of them, the man had prepared all the necessary documents. Zahart said that after his brother's death, the estate was in complete disarray, but the lady handled everything perfectly. He was sincerely happy that everything ended the way it did. The fortunes of the duchy were surprisingly strong and supportive, and after receiving advice from Moulton, the maiden still checked the affairs to make sure no problems arose. In fact, the uncle was worried that the incident that happened at the procession might happen again. The woman nodded and asked him to show a little more patience. She would not constantly assign some tasks. Lately, the Countess's creditors have been coming to the estate. Of course, this may not be the Zahart family's business, but the girl could have met her stepmother. The little girl involuntarily returned to the past once she saved a friend, but her mother yelled at her, reminding her that such a thing was dangerous. When the voice rose even more, the girl shouted that the mistress always helps her, so she would like to do the same. In her opinion, this was a good start. The woman froze because she didn't expect such a reaction. She didn't know what to say. She just started to get a little nervous. The brunette decided to calm the beauty down a little and explain again that she shouldn't act rashly, otherwise it won't end well. Once the lady wanted to become like her stepmother, but now sitting opposite her she felt only disgust. The woman noticed that they had not seen each other for a long time. All this time the lady was worried about her daughter. It seemed to her that the lady looked a little upset, or rather exhausted, because of her problems. The woman heard that Schiff tried to harm the beauty. None of the nobles know about it, so there is no need to worry about it. The man was always a commoner and pretended to be someone incomprehensible. He never had talent. It's good that everyone finally found out about his true essence. It turned out that Reina became the fourth princess's servant. They did not want to enter into a war between her and the duke, but Schiff took on debts in the girl's name. The woman's uncle was not the kind of person who would care. The beauty tried her best to solve the problem, but no one knew that everything would turn against her. Fereshati listened attentively and did not interrupt. Now she didn't care at all. She was asked why she had suddenly decided to come. The lady understood that the relationship would never be the same as before, but she did not know why she suddenly lost her daughter's trust. The beauty declared that she had been betrayed first. The second act of the play began. Zahart thought that Schiff had acted wrongly, even wanting to marry, not to mention anything else. The woman could not listen to the lies. She knew what was behind it all, and she did not want to have any connections with those she once held dear. The brunette still asked again what she had done. Fereshati could not control herself. She noticed that tears had welled up in her eyes. Leaning back in her chair, the lady wearily asked if her daughter was really going to continue to behave in this way. It was wrong. A beauty should take care of herself. Wayward people tend to succumb to their illusions. Fereshati's father was the same. He ruined everything. In order not to talk anymore, the lady stood up and left. She froze in the shadows, making it impossible to see her facial expression. Having gone home, Zahart kept thinking she did not understand whether they really wanted to kill her just for money. If her mother's goal was the inheritance, the wedding with Schiff was not necessary. It is strange that the woman told the whole truth at the last moment when her daughter was almost dying, as if she was trying to cause pain. Perhaps there was a reason behind everything that was happening that was unknown to La Pharaon. Something had happened between them and the Count. When the carriage left, Reina came to apologize for Schiff. She didn't think that he would do that. Because he was ordered to sit quietly, the girl promised that she would repay the debt, but she was forced to remain silent. When Her Excellency arrived back at the estate, Moulton immediately ran out to meet her, saying that there was something she needed to see. The man led the lady into the main hall, where she was already met by Gloria La Pharaon, who sent away the maids almost immediately after the tea was poured into the mugs. The woman was a former female duchess and is the grandmother of the current archduke. There is no one in the entire kingdom who does not know this lady. She is famous for various reasons, but the most famous of them is that she was married to a member of her own family. No matter how distant the degree of kinship in this country, people with the same surname rarely marry the woman after the transfer of the title sat in her estate, but decided to leave. Now the beauty asked if Fereshati really thought that the family's blood was being spread. It was not at all what seemed real. Unlike direct relatives who are involved in public activities, almost everyone on the collateral line lives on the outskirts, avoiding people. Terdeo simply believed his wife's words and began an investigation. The investigation has begun. Nothing can be done about it. If their non-involvement is repeated, then the lady will be held responsible for her words. The beauty froze. Of course, she didn't really like where their conversation was heading. The woman went out into the corridor and continued to think she considered the Duke frightening. But Gloria was different. The heroine did not know that her husband listened to her. The lady asked Baka when the mistress arrived. It seems that a room had already been prepared for her since the matter was serious. Lafirion did not warn anyone. Circia went on a business trip. Even if she heard about what happened, she is unlikely to be able to come back in the shortest possible time, so there is no point in worrying. The beauty would like to leave these thoughts behind, but suddenly realized that soon all relatives in a direct line would gather in one mansion. 2 weeks later, His Excellency returned. Selfie came out first, asking what was going on. He heard a noise. The man told the lady that she was right. The child was dying even before he was wounded. Now he would have to go in for questioning. Selphius also deserved to know the truth, but he didn't want to see him yet. The hero asked Farashadi to stay with the baby so that he wouldn't worry. Phoenix was taking care of that child who was in bad condition. The brunette wanted to see him, which wasn't entirely strange. The boy was not allowed into the room because the friend's health was still too bad. They most likely could not help in any way, but they could try. The girl still asked to come in, and as the mistress of the estate she was allowed to do so. A tiny girl with white hair was sitting on the bed. As soon as the baby saw Selphius, she immediately hid under the blanket and began to tremble. The doctor led them out the door. It seemed that the beauty could at least communicate with the young man, but it turned out that this would take some time. The body had recovered a little at the time of discovery. She was in serious condition. The estate did not even know about her birth. The criminal turned out to be the same family doctor as Phoenix after the divorce. He left his job and lived on the outskirts because he was grief-stricken. Lafirion left him alone, but did not suspect that this would happen. The man stood in the main office. His hands were tied. He was trusted, but for some reason he did something terrible. The Duke felt strange feelings, more disappointment. The young man wanted to know how it happened that the hero had a child of such an age. If he had been divorced for a long time, the blonde smiled. They are all naive. Gloria began to be indignant that she was being treated so brazenly. The man could not deny the fact that he had pumped blood out of a child and sold it. Illegitimate children are not that rare, but the stranger decided to apologize for not reporting the baby's birth. Lafirion shouldn't be angry. The hero just wanted to show the greatness of the family. Unlike other poisons, blood leaves no traces, and just a few drops can kill a person. Everyone who has tried the poison says that it is simply wonderful. It is not something that needs to be hidden, but on the contrary, it is easier to put it on display. The Duke was silent until he asked if it was true that the blonde had done such a terrible thing to the girl. Only because of this, when the secret was revealed, everyone would consider the family demons. They would be under threat. The man wanted to shout because of the cowards in power. The sideline lives miserably. It is right to prove their superiority while still alive. The master ordered him to be silent, but he did not close. Terdeo is also not pure. He probably also used his blood and did it only for himself for the most part. The man's victory in the war was due to poison. The hero remained silent, but then said that he had never done such a thing. In war, blood cannot be used for such purposes. The blonde realized that it was time to change strategy. The conversation turned to Farashadi. She was brought to the estate only because the curse did not work on her. The brunette conducted an experiment to understand what was wrong and used poison. The hero was simply born with a good pedigree, but so he has no right to be so arrogant. Turning away, the young man came closer, and after listening to the stranger, it became clear that there was complete chaos in his head, and nothing could help. Gloria intervened. She was not going to listen to the opinion of a relative. She needed to know where the child's blood was donated. Some have already started discussing that the baby is acting cautiously. Several days have passed since she was brought in, even they don't know yet. All because of a dirty charlatan who brought the child to a successful state. If it was known that he was a dealer, he would have been watched more closely. Some of the Lafirion family from the sideline work as subordinates to Phoenix. This is the only option for how to lead a social life. The day before, the doctor said that in order to communicate with the baby, we would have to wait until her condition became stable. Since that day, the woman has not been able to get to the beauty. She should have opened up sooner so that there would be no more problems. But it was difficult. While the lady was working, evening came. In the corridor, she met Selfie. He was wearing a strange mask-like thing. The boy noticed the woman almost immediately and immediately asked her to help him. Unfortunately, he had no one else to ask for a favor. The hero didn't want to give up so easily. He wanted to try everything, even if Phoenix scolded him. Nodding, Farashadi suggested trying together. Knocking on the door, the lady asked to come in for a moment. The woman introduced herself and brought in a boy with a cat mask on his face. At first the baby froze, but then hid under the blanket again. The beauty was silent, but then sticking her face out a little said that her name was Eilert. From that day on, doctors began treatment with the patient blindfolded under such conditions. The alertness became weaker, and the condition began to stabilize. Phoenix praised Selfie and asked to spend more time with her every day the guys came to visit the baby. Her condition improved, which could not but please. The child did not know her exact age. She did not move from the spot, still remaining a little scared. She said that in the past there was a woman who took care of her. One day that person simply stopped visiting. Perhaps it was the maid she taught Aeleth to at least speak a little. It is a pity that the man thought of his daughter as a blood donor. Farashati would like the girl to recover over time and forget about her problems. The blonde asked when her father would return. The Duchess understood the situation, so she said that if she didn't want to, she might not see him at all. The maiden could stay in the estate and live a quiet life. In the end, nothing would be required of her. The lady only wanted the little girl to play with them. The heroine was given a teddy bear for some reason. She remembered the past. She became scared. Tears began to flow down her cheeks. She felt sorry for her. Circia was surprised it took her several weeks to get there to hear the news, but nothing was decided yet. When the woman approached their relative, she almost immediately hit him in the face. She was not going to give him peace. There was blood everywhere. The Duke seemed to have become completely soft since he stood aside as if he didn't care that the man used his little daughter since he didn't want to suffer himself. It was as if my brother had forgotten how to work after leaving the battlefield. If he was going to continue being a wimp, he should have left. If the relative does not open his mouth, he will be forced to. The man was left in the cell, but he screamed, asking why they were treating him like this, considering that he looked after them as children. The woman decided to take care of everything herself. Her brother ordered the area to be cordoned off and even stationed his knights there. The brunette was still strange. He felt unnecessary compassion. Circia could no longer be in his company. It was all very strange. Gloria was informed that the man was going to be sent to the villa to Crips. Everything turned out as the lady expected. His Excellency took charge of the blood collection, and the remaining powers for checking the sideline were delegated to Lady Circia. The Duchess will take care of all the affairs and management of the mansion. Selfie has noticeably become much happier over the past time. Farashati helped the boy change Gloria. Herself noticed that the girl was constantly near him and tried to talk about different topics, showing interest directly. Baka's son expected the lady to ask questions. Crips would finish the job. There was no need to worry about spilled blood. A few more days, and it would all be over. Until then, the woman could not believe that the family had a person who was doing this. Usually they do not resort to extreme measures, but it seems that this time it was more correct. The more the man dug for information, the more he found the young man even laid hands on the workers he struck at places that even the family did not know about. After some time, the two finished with invitations, and a single budget was established for monetary compensation. The Leferians have been very busy for the past few days. The enrollment was eventually approved. Everything ended well. Mrs. Gloria took responsibility for all the rumors surrounding the paperwork for Aelet's enrollment, and the family announced that they had miraculously found their lost child. This matter had to be reported to the royal family. The man was glad that the main Leferians had sorted everything out. He assessed his strength and understood that he could not have handled it himself. The gentleman was incredibly lucky to have Gloria and Farashati. The girl didn't know how to react to this, but that was all she had left. Ailet's condition improved a little. She could already go for walks once again. When she left the room, she ran into the maids. Farashati allowed them to come and help with whatever was needed. All written procedures were followed. All the members of the Aelate family returned. The place was also already prepared. The young man asked if it was worth taking the little girl to the place. The beauty was happy that now everything would be fine, but she also decided to convince the child of this. He explained that the family loved her and would take care of her. When they entered the hall, everyone was surprised, and each of those present put on animal masks to cover their eyes. Circia was the first to approach. She greeted the little girl and introduced herself. Baka whispered to the lady that he also did not know what would be in the hall. Selfie decided to take his sister to the tables with food. Apparently, this idea was his. Fortunately, everything went as well as possible. They wanted to apologize to the girl. Before that, they had only seen her from afar, but now they had the opportunity to talk calmly. Of course, the family is responsible for the fact that they couldn't find Alet for so long. It will be difficult to forgive, but it will probably still be possible to accept. Circia nodded. She promised that no one would hurt the child again. Her heart deserved only the best. Alet didn't answer, but her face showed that she agreed, and they immediately started asking her about her preferences and what she would like to do. The maids had been discussing tea drinking since early morning, which was also planned. Apparently, the whole series of events was connected with the new girl. At the banquet, the beauty expressed a desire to see the flowers up close. Most of all, she wanted to be safe and see such beauty. Selfie had a day off from the academy and decided to create a good relationship, but then it turned out that Terdeo would also come. On the way to the garden, the young man was not very talkative. It turned out that everyone else was busy, but not him. They wanted to talk, but then both began a sentence at the same time. The beauty apologized for her behavior. Then she gave in to her feelings and put a lot of pressure on Lefirion. She didn't want this. The man brushed it off. It was his fault that he couldn't think rationally. His wife didn't say anything bad or special. During the walk, Celsius asked questions about Alet. At first they wanted to leave the baby in the mansion to receive an education. After a while, the whole group arrived at a place with beautiful flowers that seemed to glow in the sun and were thus mesmerizing. The girl was happy for the first time her ringing laughter was heard, which filled the entire greenhouse. While the children were playing, the married couple went to have tea. The procession ended, but the man said that he would not return to the Grand Duchy for the time being. The problem with the rebels was not completely solved. This, of course, was frustrating. If the stay in the capital dragged on, then the Duke was going to return back, but for a while. He will not force the lady to go with him. In any situation, Terdeo, as he promised, will keep the contract signed earlier. The lady knows that they are worried about her. She heard from Moulton that after her stepmother left the mansion, people were assigned to her. The woman was grateful that everything was just like that, and her husband cleared his throat, asking if this was really the reason why Farashati always looked embarrassed. The beauty had something else in mind, but noticing that the Duke was uncomfortable, she turned away and started talking about the flowers that were blooming very beautifully. She wanted to know if the man had spoken to Aelith. He was the one who had come all the way and found her, so he should have spoken. Rising from her chair, Farashati offered to go with her. Looking into her eyes, the Duke caught himself thinking that he seemed to have blushed a little. In the evening, the lady found her husband in the room. He was writing something sitting at the table. Usually she was always alone, but apparently he decided to change something. After the party, the Duke did not come, and the day before the lady slept in the bed. Now she was asked to do the same. The beauty decided to be smarter and suggested sharing the bed. This has been going on for a year now. They can lie on different sides. There was silence in the room until the young man noticed that he was glad Aelith liked everything, and that was the priority at the moment. Phoenix said that due to the weakness of the body, the girl may have seizures. Fortunately, there were no symptoms yet. She needed help so that the body could withstand all the difficulties. Rebecca showed up that morning, and the first thing she did was marvel at how the lady was preparing for the social season. The lady looked as excellent as usual. Previously, a lady was seen wearing only inconspicuous clothes, so she was happy that everything had changed. Gloria apologized to the girl. She was wrong about her, and it turned out that the lady knew what was going on when she thought about selling blood. The lady assured that she would probably never forget the favor she asked to ask for anything at any time if suddenly something was needed. The heroine told the woman about social events, and preparations began. In front of Farashati were skilled craftsmen whom not everyone could afford, even for money. The tailor asked about favorite colors and everything else because he intended to do everything to the lady's taste, and for convenience, he even compiled a complete catalog of possible options. The jeweler had prepared several pieces of jewelry. She was only going to make a rough fit, and then, after designing the dress, actually send the jewelry. After some time, they still said goodbye. After all, it was an honor for them to be responsible for the preparation of Duchess Lefirion, and the woman was also glad that everything turned out this way. It had been a busy day, for afterwards the lady had gone to the shoemaker. Of course she was prepared for such a thing, but it was different from when she was a simple count's daughter. Bacca's son noticed that the woman looked tired. She said that she was completely fine and that everything would be fine. When the lady took a sip of tea, she choked. It seems the drink was too bitter. This tea is used as a medicine. It was His Excellency who asked to offer it. It is said to help with insomnia and also brings peace of mind and recovery from fatigue. The man noticed that there was a stack of letters on the table. He offered to deliver them, but the main thing was to be vigilant because, in fact, there were quite a lot of recipients. The day of the first party arrived unnoticed. The woman was ready for what she would have to do and hoped that the day would go as best as possible. Gloria asked the beauty not to be nervous because she was next to her, and that was the reason why the lady only worried even more. This meeting at the Duke's house, a meeting for cultural exchange between noble aristocrats who had come of age, the lady suggested this place as it was more suitable. When the lady was a countess, she went to events with her father, and during her debut, she danced several times with the young gentleman. After meeting with Schiff, the beauty never went anywhere. Looking at the guests, the maiden understood that some of them were familiar to her. Gloria had not arrived in the capital for long, so she had not had enough time. She had just met with some acquaintances. The greeting was delayed. The lady asks to take care of Ferrasciati. People hearing this froze because it was all strange. The women quickly became active. The social season had just begun. The Duchess had arrived, so she would really be taken care of. The day would be devoted to greetings from Her Excellency, and compliments immediately poured in on the outfit and jewelry, which seemed excellent. Some of them had seen the Duchess a few months ago at the Academy, but now they had met again. Some have noticed that the girl and Gloria are close. Having met after a long time, they have a lot to talk about. Since the party was dedicated to music, the conversations here were mostly about music, and the aristocrats discussed only that. Although this is a place that was created with support, but it is necessary to gradually make a good impression. The lady was going to visit them again, but during the divorce, for some reason the conversation turned to Ailette. One of the ladies asked if the girl missed her family. Perhaps Countess Zahart could come too. Lately, the woman has been attending meetings frequently since her daughter became a duchess. The mother has received many invitations from everywhere. The beauty has repeatedly said that she is sad to realize the fact that after the wedding they became distant parents, will always worry about their children. One of those present reported that a dais was on the first floor. Apparently, the Duke had not called him for a short while to find out something. Fortune knows a lot about studying abroad, something he hasn't been known for before. The lady did not understand why Gloria had invited the man. As a rule, such an atmosphere only threatened to ruin the entire evening. The Duchess, when it was her turn, merely said that she had heard how handsome the boy was. Rumor has it that Fortune is the crown princess's lover, and she has a weakness for beautiful appearance. The room was getting hotter and hotter. Some people wanted to go out onto the balcony and get some fresh air. They needed this air. The evening came to an end. It was clear to everyone that the next time would not be soon, but there was still hope. The ladies stood in the courtyard and said goodbye. Ferrasciati was initially worried about the stupid rumors about her, but was happy that everything turned out well in the end. Thanks to the lady got to know each of the guests, which only made her feel that they were not at all hostile. Before the big reception, they had to attend small meetings, and Zahart realized that she would soon make some good connections. After that event, the lady did indeed attend various meetings where not everything was so boring. Perhaps because the news had spread throughout the eastern region, it caused some to freeze at the sight of the lady. Reputation could not be achieved by force alone. For a family that had become famous in the war, it was difficult to mold something real out of the situation. Once again, Rebecca asked why the Duchess always went everywhere alone. It would be nice to take the Duke with her. The lady was not reckless. She chose meetings where only ladies were present. Recently, her husband was not in the mansion. It would not have been possible to talk anyway. The woman asked to pass on the letter. Knights could not resist asking for what purpose the girl had decided to do this. For some reason, the heroine assumed that it was about a dais. She instantly became angry, saying that in this case, the acquaintance did not need help, which, however, he absolutely did not deserve. Later, the girl asked if she should prepare and bring tea to the lady. The beauty was going to another place, so she refused. The brunette understood that her words would be out of place, but she couldn't help but notice that lately the lady had been going to meetings and working late. Knights was starting to feel dizzy just looking at the letters, so it would be better to go for a walk in the garden to get some fresh air. The woman did go there, but to visit Aileth. The little girl was sad because her favorite flowers had fallen. Earlier, the child had a dream in which she saw the same pink plants, and she told the woman another detail that made her surprised. The Duke returned home just as the boys returned from their walk, and he noticed that the lady looked pale, as if something had happened. Farashati had just opened her mouth to tell the truth when Circia appeared, followed by 2 maids. As soon as Lafarion noticed Zahart, she immediately smiled happily. She wanted to talk to the lady after the party, but there was no time. Terdeo, in a word, hinted that his sister should leave. She nodded and only asked if her uncle and grandmother were in the mansion. The woman wanted to talk about her investigation. Farashati almost immediately became active and asked to participate. The red-haired girl, as it turned out, only wanted to say this, and they went to the place together to discuss everything. The beauty went to the villa to Mr. Cripps at that time. She was angry a year before he started selling Eyelet's blood. He took his blood little by little and sold it. In simple terms, the lady said that he had developed the poison himself. Gloria, sorting through the papers, asked who the seller was. The man himself didn't know. He didn't know how far it all spread. Seeing his reaction, it seemed that he wasn't lying. The detailed information was at the bottom of the document. Phoenix looked through it and realized how many people died due to their fault. The responsibility lies with him. The lady nodded, but stated that the responsibility lay with the whole family. They needed to try to ensure that this never happened again. If such a situation arises, they are obliged to conduct an investigation, whatever the outcome, and in the future random checks will become a principle. Terdeo said that Farashati was the first to suspect something, and thanks to her the whole scheme became known. The head of the family suddenly decided to ask how the lady found out about everything. The beauty bowed her head and collected her thoughts. It was difficult for her. Initially, the heroine wanted to take part. Because she has something to tell. The story may be long, everyone should prepare. After the whole story, questions began. Phoenix asked if the lady really thought that Aelith had returned to the past. The girl said that she had seen a cherry blossom in that place. The little girl remembered that she fell asleep looking at the wonderful flowers, and when she woke up, she returned to the moment before the trees blossomed. The doctor was still unsure since the child grew up in a terrible place. Perhaps she was just dreaming old memories. Gloria supported the idea because the girl was really deeply traumatized. Farashati nodded. She understood from the very beginning that most likely no one would believe her. Eyelet told the woman about all her feelings. She said that at that moment she was even more scared than when the blood was pumped out of her. The beauty felt better when she looked at the flowers, because she so strongly wanted to see them in reality. It was good that it was only a dream. The girl gave her sister a few beautiful petals now sitting in the hall. The woman clenched her hand into a fist. She decided to act. A story was told that Zahart also returned to the past. She retained memories of how she was killed in the past. Then she experienced the same symptoms as when dying from poison. When the heroine woke up, she returned 2 months ago. At that time, the lady was also confused, but after several incidents, she believed in reality. In fact, the Duchess did not think that her husband would launch an investigation into the poison after she spoke of her doubts. Then the cause of death of the killer was another poison. That man in the square did not die. Because of the Lafirions, it was concluded that after the autopsy, he woke up. The woman froze, realizing that the man could be the same as him. The curse does not work on the lady because she had already died from this blood. It seems that the Duke's curse does not work on people like Farashati, who were in time because of the poison and returned to the past. Surely the killer still had memories of the past. The maiden still does not know what happened and how regression and curses are connected. After she listened to the story of that child, she thought that it would be right to tell the Lafirions about everything. Phoenix began to understand what was happening. Circia stated that it was not so. She did not want to believe that it was all because of their curse. The woman decided to ask who killed Zahart in the past. The heroine could only say that possessing these memories, she had to get out of there and protect herself. After she returned to the past, she offered His Excellency a contract for a year. No one knew that it was only for a year. Daniel entered the room at the most inopportune moment and dropped the tea tray when he heard that the Duchess was planning to leave. The blue-eyed man with shaking hands asked if he had misheard. This could not be allowed under any circumstances. Baka also entered the room, and from the very beginning he began to accuse his son of the fact that he, it seemed, could no longer even cope with his tasks. When the boy was asked what was wrong with him, he decided to tell the truth, which of course could not please the Viscount. Moulton immediately changed his mind and said that they should leave, but his son asked why he didn't say anything to make the lady stay. Farashadi understood that what was happening was extremely unpleasant for her. This whole situation was full of drama, and it was all because of her. Sertia started talking. She started thinking that there was something special about the marriage, but it turned out that it was all a one-year contract. Gloria had heard that La Furion was enthusiastic about the affairs of the duchy, but it was strange to realize that it was not a job with a long-term perspective. Phoenix intervened. He suggested that they end here. Everyone in the room needed to think about what the Archduchess had said. It would take time. The lady nodded. They all dispersed, but before leaving the room, the lady looked at the Duke one last time. He had mixed emotions. In the hallway, a man asked Daniel why his behavior was out of the ordinary. He tried to defend his point of view, but nothing worked. Moulton didn't quite agree with the hero, but he continued to press, declaring that in his heart, the Viscount thought exactly the same, and that was undeniable. Blue-Eyed exhaled and still decided to ask if the lady was truthful when she said that she was going to leave the estate very soon. From the very beginning, there was a contract for a year. The man whined that he could not return to the time when the Duchess did not yet exist. Moulton had a different opinion. The lady was not a servant of their estate and did not marry to work for the others. They spoke so loudly that Selfie, who had just left, heard it. In the morning, the woman, as usual, was sitting in the office with Rebecca. The girl noticed that it was a beautiful day outside, although it seemed like it would rain. The lady was sent an invitation to the Imperial Palace for a party. This is a grand event for everyone in the duchy and beyond. The woman should have asked if her husband would go with her, but after that conversation, he did not come into the room and also missed breakfast. The door opened. Terdeo arrived just in time. He walked forward and sat down not far from the beauty. Silence fell. Farashadi admitted to herself that it was the first time she had seen the young man sitting there. Only once he had come on business, and then he had quickly left. Even though it was late, the brunette wanted to apologize for how rudely he treated his wife after their first meeting. That day, everything was very strange for both of them. Because of unconfirmed speculation, the young man poisoned Zakhart with blood twice, and she might not have woken up. The act was selfish. If it weren't for the lady, the guy would never have found out that Jen was torturing Aelith. She advised him to investigate, and his suspicions were confirmed. In fact, the hero simply did not know how to apologize correctly. He knew that yesterday's conversation had a direct bearing, so the girl did not want to stay in the estate longer than she was supposed to. The brunette knows that his words may not be enough, but despite this, he felt that he had to say it. The woman nodded and asked where her husband spent the night. The hero slept in the office and did not have breakfast. Farashadi asked to bring her sandwiches for a snack they could eat together. They began discussing matters as usual. Members of the Council of Ministers had recently arrived. Most likely the young man could head to the castle. After the conversation, the beauty seemed to glow. Even Rebecca noticed it. It seemed to her that the relations in the family had improved a little. In addition to caring, the girl thought that that incident at the very beginning of the relationship would be forgotten quickly. She did not think that she would receive any apologies. In the morning, Lady Gloria told her daughter-in-law not to take care of the duchy's affairs any longer. Despite this, the lady still wanted to study. The brunette suggested doing as his heart desired. He would talk to the family about the marriage contract himself. The man even spoke with care. Farashadi thought he was a cautious and silent person, but now only impulsive actions were visible. Baka apologized for yesterday's incident. He didn't think his son would behave like that. It's true that he should have been a little more careful than he actually was. Farashadi nodded and smiled. Everything was actually fine. On the contrary, she was pleased by the fact that at least someone would regret her departure. It turned out that something else happened after that. The young master found out that the lady was about to leave, all because of the butler's negligence. In the evening, the girl met the little Duke. He was even surprised that the heroine came. Usually she is so busy that she constantly sits in the office. Smiling, the beauty asked how the young man was doing and how his day at the academy had gone. It turned out that everything was great, and the woman was pleased with this situation. The boy answered very monosyllabically. He himself did not notice how he accidentally grabbed the Duchess's hand too hard, which made her jerk. Almost immediately, Selfie began to apologize. The woman said that everything was fine. She was just surprised that the grip was so strong already at 9 years old. The brunette was immediately asked if he had really heard the news about the beauty's departure. He nodded. It upset him because it seemed that Farashadi loved Terdeo. Then the woman unknowingly spoke about the marriage contract because she thought that everything would be fine, because sooner or later everyone would find out about it. She was too frivolous. All that was left was to try to fix the situation. Zackhart believed that even if he left, their relationship would not change in any way. Despite everything, they became friends, so they will see each other often, and besides, the woman will remain a duchess for a long time. The time for the celebration came. The lady came forward. She could not help but remind that it was not necessary to greet her. The main thing for the guests was to enjoy themselves. Farashati did not think that she would find herself at the ball of the first crown princess so quickly. She arrived there together with the duke. A few days before, when it all started, the whole family was gathered and having dinner again. There was a strange atmosphere in the hall. Nothing had changed. Cercia broke the silence when she asked if the mistress would be going to the party this time. It was difficult from the maid who reported Farashati's decision. Gloria intervened if the event was so important. Theo had to go too. The young man didn't even argue, and immediately obediently agreed. The woman could not imagine in the script that the Duke would want to come along. Because of his marriage to Farashati, it was inconvenient for him to come to events at the royal palace. After that day, Selphie looked a little dissatisfied, but fortunately he found the strength to understand the situation, and he played with Aelith as before. Almost immediately, the married couple was greeted by everyone gathered in the hall. It was an honor for them to meet such great people. The man didn't answer and walked past. He remained the same, just like Stone Farashati suggested that it would be more correct to say hello in return. Several minutes passed when the dance began. The lady did not even think about it until the man extended his hand to her, smiling. The young man did not know whether he could dance well, but he decided to imitate, and he really did spin very elegantly, which was even breathtaking. The girl still couldn't understand why she was offered a dance. A person not accustomed to social circles dances trying as best he can. After it was all over, the lady said that the hero was a great dancer. In fact, he had been training, but he wouldn't tell about it. The conversation was interrupted by the princess, who sarcastically remarked that she was surprised because she had managed to catch such a rare sight as a dancing duke. The woman suggested that Farashati look around the palace is beautiful. She will definitely not be bored. Terdeo will stay nearby for now to chat. The assembled people were discussing something right up until the moment when the Duchess appeared in the distance. The girl who accompanied the woman was silent, but decided to clarify the situation. The imperial family sent invitations to everyone, but they hoped that some would not come. Thanks to Zahart, the crown princess seems very happy. They will communicate even more in the future, and that would be a nice bonus. The palace really turned out to be huge. Her Majesty was distracted by a girl who came running. The brunette suggested that Farashati go on while she sorted out her affairs. The beauty nodded and went forward to study the surroundings a little more. There, in one of the halls, she met her friends. The party was intended to be an interaction with the nobility, but the friends had also said they would come, so a meeting was agreed upon. One of the girls read the plan that Farashati sent. The plan most likely will not be implemented. The uncle did not tell the bitter truth directly, only in order not to go against the will of his late brother. There is no point in counting on profit. They say it is better to buy mining rights in mines with the same investment. Another lady chimed in that if Zackhart were to take up this business, it could be considered an attempt to get along with the imperial family. At the end of the evening, questions arose about where the Duke had disappeared to. It turned out that he had gone to talk a little with the princess, and she had called him herself. Everyone saw the couple enter the hall. The reaction to the Duke and Duchess was wonderful, but of course not for Farashati. For a while the friends thought that they wouldn't be able to talk because there was a whole sea of people around. Someone entered the balcony. It turned out to be Adeus. The acquaintance was in his debt. He is well versed in foreign affairs and did her a favor. The blonde greeted everyone present. He saw a familiar lady and wanted to say hello. The brunette suggested that the beauty get advice from Fortune. The heroine refused. Rather, she should also repay him for the service. Blue Eyes realized that he had a good chance. He would like to hear the story of how they met the Duke. The woman began to make up a story on the fly. They met because of problems with the Count's inheritance, and he said that the girl was his type. The man asked to tell everything a little more specifically. The lady was confused. There were too many questions. After all, she had no choice. When it seemed that he would have to tell the story, a servant came. He said that the Duke was already waiting for his wife. He ended the conversation. Adeus offered to accompany the lady. She did not have time to refuse as all of Ferishati's friends followed them. As they walked down the corridor, the beauty kept trying to figure out the man's hidden motives. Perhaps he wanted to see Theo. The blonde decided to start talking. In fact, he needed to get down to business that time. The attack happened because of Fortune. It was all on his conscience. Blue-eyed was not against somehow atoning for his guilt. He promised that whatever the lady asked, he would fulfill everything in the best possible way. The friends didn't understand anything, so they also asked their own questions. Some assumed that the man went with them to see La Furion. The hero waved it off. He generally thought that the Duke was a so-so person. The lady froze. She became even more confused. All this was gaining momentum. They themselves did not notice how they reached the main hall and met His Excellency. The woman introduced her friends and pointed to Fortune. The beauty realized that the blonde's gaze was very strange, either because of the awkwardness of the situation or because of something else. She did not understand at all how to react to something like this. Adeus quickly announced that it was time for him to leave, and after that he left without making anyone wait. Ferishati's acquaintances followed his example. After the incident, things did not end so easily. Many people came to the couple. The Duke was still quite a popular person. The brunette had already told in the carriage about the princess's interest in Ferishati. She needed support, so she constantly asked Terdeo's opinion, but now she asked about his wife. The heroine had no idea what to do next. There was silence, as if it was the woman's turn to speak, and she told about her evening. They met with friends and discussed business there. The brunette asked if this was the reason why the lady was constantly trying to visit as many social circles as possible. The Duke knew that he would have to leave again from tomorrow. He had heard that the two merchants who traded blood with Jen had disappeared. Shasha promised that if anything was needed, she would immediately let him know. If her husband were to look for the registry, he could upon request check the Zackart family. The girl also asked to rent a banquet hall in the mansion. The man conveyed the request to Gloria so that they could decide together what to do next. It will be difficult for the Duchess to move around with the county seat, but she can do as she wishes. The lady was surprised. She was worried that because of the event, many people would come, and it would be burdensome. The blonde waved it off but asked about something else, because there was still something that she didn't quite understand. Obviously, the lady was going to pay the rent, but it was unclear why. No matter what happened later, for now, Zahart would still be part of the Leferian family and she shouldn't worry about it. It would be better if they paid for everything. A group of merchants holds an annual charity auction in Lebrun. It's not a party at all, but the name for the donations through auction is somewhat similar, usually held in the second half of the year during the harvest. After meeting with the former Duchess, the girl went to meet with Serzia, who was a little late, but of course apologized. The heroine was busy with her barter schedule and returned in the middle of her previous business trip. Apparently, everyone is that busy. Red-Eyed was informed that the woman wanted to hold a charity auction, and it seems she even found the thing she would put up for auction. Even though the event will be in the annex, this is still Leferion territory, and many nobles will come. You will need as many of yours as possible. The Lebrun event was originally set up for merchants, but the girl also suggested holding 2 events at the same time, which seemed like a good idea. Ferishati said goodbye. Next time they would look at the goods together. Today the lady was going to head to the warehouse. His Excellency said before leaving that Selfie was acting strange. He must be a little worried the boy found out about the marriage contract of 2 people. The girl sat and waited for the guy in the gazebo as usual, but then it turned out that he had left a long time ago because he wanted to take a walk alone. As the lady was going upstairs, a cry was heard. A voice shouted for one of the maids to be immediately put in prison. She was crying and did not understand. The woman immediately rushed upstairs to understand the situation a little better. Selfie turned to the head maid. He had already repeatedly asked her to train the staff better so that they would not do whatever they wanted. The hero stated that even if they apologized, it meant nothing, and he would kick them all out without a letter of recommendation. At that moment, La Furion entered the room. The Duchess asked what was going on, and one of the maids told her that they were just discussing how sad it would be when Ferishati left, because she had been so cozy. The woman stepped forward to speak to her subordinates herself. She needed to calm Selphius and his outburst of anger. The heroine doesn't care when and where they talk about her, but in the mansion she should have been more careful, especially in front of the heir. The mistress ordered all the maids to be taken away. This will not be forgotten so easily. Each of them will be spoken to later about their behavior. The boy remembered something else, how they discussed it as if Eileth was the duke's daughter. They thought that she would be made the new successor. The conversation smoothly turned to the point that the lady was about to leave, and one of the maids accidentally overheard the gentleman talking to his assistant, who told him everything. The brunette asked why everything turned out this way. The young man was sure he asked not to discuss it anymore, especially within the mansion. It was not entirely right. The maid apologized for telling. After all, the mistress was good and close to the family. The other one waved it off anyway. No matter what, the woman would still leave. The maid thought that it would be easier for Farashati to get a divorce. Even if she had a child, in any case he could not claim the place of heir. Now sitting in the room, the boy did not know how to answer. Although the woman asked to tell the whole truth about what happened, Selfie did not want the lady to leave. The beauty tried to calm him down. The young man was most offended by what happened, and in fact this is what needed to be learned about the truth. The head maid scolded the girls. She had already warned them that they should not speak behind the back of the mistress who had done so much for them. The woman remembered what had happened to the disobedient maids when she was little. They had all been killed. She could not promise her subordinates safety. In the end, Selfius never said anything. No matter how much the lady tried to get an answer, it seemed as if the boy had become accustomed to silence. In the morning, the heroine met with her uncle. He immediately noticed that something was wrong. The woman said that the child was worried about something but did not talk about it. The man thought he had already heard these words from his brother Farashati, was exactly the same. There was a time when he asked the same things to understand his little girl. The hero clearly remembered the moment when he was rejected once again. He was supported and told that a beloved would definitely appear. Once upon a time, everything was fine. They always supported the man, making him feel a little less alone. Farashati asked what happened today. The hero missed his brother even more. Later he was going to talk to his assistant. The lady on her way home was thinking that perhaps it would be worthwhile to go to the academy. A decision was made. No one expected the Duchess to arrive unannounced. The woman became interested in how well the young man was adjusting, and it turned out that he was doing well with both his friends and his objects. In fact, the teacher thought that he would lag behind other children who had studied in the capital since childhood, but he studies very hard and has integrated into the educational process perfectly. Be that as it may, the process is still complicated. After all, the young man has not lived in the capital all his life. He still needs time. The brunette led the lady to the boy's office. The beauty watched the boy. He tried very hard. The lady said that there was no need to call the hero because in that case he would be distracted. After all, the teacher told a story. Her husband is into collecting LeBron stuff. She heard that the vendors were busy preparing for a charity party. The event was organized by Farashati, and a friend immediately asked if her husband and child could also participate. Shasha smiled and nodded. She would send the tickets as soon as possible. It would be an honor for a woman to take part in such an important event. She was glowing with happiness. She thinks that the auction will be a good boost to the future for her child. She believes that everything should be fine. The words gave rise to the thought that for Selfie what was happening would also be a pretty good experience, and this would only be a plus for him. If he was lucky, the boy would find some acquaintances. I met a boy in the garden. He said that he was just looking for the toilet, but in fact he was just skipping classes. The teacher ordered him to return to class because the fact that he is a good student does not mean anything. Daniel asked Gloria for forgiveness. That incident with the maids put everything in its place. As a caretaker, he had to take care of everything, but now he would kick out all the maids. The Duchess asked to leave this matter to her so the lady could do nothing about it. She handed over some documents with schedules and papers. It was decided to send 2 of the maids to the stables and 1 to the villa where the heir lived. It would have been better to forbid them to work, but the motives were different. Gloria also thought that the punishment should be more severe, but Farashati decided differently, choosing the option for everyone else. Soon, the 2 arrived home. It seems that classes at the academy ended a little earlier than usual, a few hours ago. The boy ran away from class because he saw the lady in the window. I had to lie that the teacher allegedly helped the young man leave, and there were no more questions about it. The blonde decided to inquire about how the preparations for the charity party were going. To some extent, Zackhart had already selected the participants. The woman decided to go look at LeBron's merchandise and take Cersei with her. She is also going to take Celsius with her. Nobody even asked the brunette since he was the heir. He was henceforth obliged to attend many events. Previously, the family did not go out into social circles, so they did not pay due attention to him. Preparations for the most important aspect began. The tailor decided to sew a good, beautiful suit when it was time to leave. It turned out that due to a tight schedule, the red-eyed one would not be able to participate in all this. Rebecca and Daniel were also given a task that seemed like it shouldn't be that difficult, and the head manager was monitoring their progress. It was decided to fence off the main building of the estate, so as not to disturb Ailette and other family members. The teacher arrived almost the last one. She was surprised that there were so many people in the hall. While the people at the entrance were checking the attendance of the nobles recommended by the teacher from the academy, the parents of the students sent letters asking for invitations. As a result, some parents went to the party. Count Trellin, a close associate of the fourth princess, also came. He is the parent of one of the students, so there was no choice but to accept him. Daniel looked around. There were a lot of participants anyway, but something was definitely missing. A lot of children came. The only one, Selfie, stood to the side and looked nervous. The girl asked him worriedly if everything was okay. Putting her hand to her forehead, the lady stated that she had no fever. Despite this, of course, it was much better to rest. The boy froze because he did not understand why everything turned out this way. The woman assured him that everything would be fine. If it got worse during the rest, he should send a servant. Soon, the Duchess was met by two acquaintances. Madame Gloria's guests were important, so the girl decided to pay them special attention. There is still some time left before the auction. The woman is still getting ready, and those who have arrived can stay in the main living room. One of the guests noted that although Farashadi had been a quiet girl at the academy, things had changed dramatically. The girls were passing by one of the offices, and laughter was heard from there. It seemed there were a lot of children there. The maids had just come out from there. Some boy was discussing the Crown Duke. He was saying that he didn't like Selfie from the start. He doesn't even have power. Another person noted that he saw how during the lesson, as soon as the young man saw the Duchess, he immediately ran to her. He does not need to adjust to his stepmother. It is strange. The nobles whisper that Leferian is not even the master's biological son. The nobles whisper about it, and it turns out that it is true. The boy with green hair noted that it was better not to talk about such things. After all, they were in Terdeo's house. The other one hit him. Everyone was in the hall anyway, and the conversation would remain between them. The one who started all this continued. No one would send the precious heir to the village. Even everyone in his family abandoned the brunette. It's just ridiculous. The woman standing behind the door asked to leave the escort of the lady's friends to the assistant. She had urgent business. As soon as everyone left, the girl was already reaching for the door handle. Someone's voice was heard behind her. She had to turn around. In front of her stood the same boy who had met her in the academy courtyard. He remained calm when he asked her to give him some time. The blonde said that he knew everything and even followed the lady to tell the truth, but it turned out that the girl herself accidentally heard everything. Selfie is bullied at the academy when the semester started. Everything was fine, but when he refused to join the group, he became an outcast. They gossip loudly, and therefore the young man does not make friends with anyone. The teachers do not know about anything because the boys are smart enough to hide their actions in the presence of adults. And more importantly, Selfie himself does not want everything to be revealed. The Duchess called the Count, and even to the farthest room, which irritated him. Countess Denier and her husband were there, as well as Baron Loremba. When the lady entered the room, she was immediately examined. Her face and body were beautiful. She was in no way inferior to the princess. There was no duke in the room, but she would have to be pleased. After the lady opened her mouth, everything changed. The Count asked why the woman was talking horrors, probably because he was the fourth princess's assistant. The girl's assistant said that he also heard the children's conversation. The man did not calm down. Of course, Moulton would be on the side of the one who hired him. Some of Gloria's acquaintances also heard about everything. The hero smiled, of course. Although he is on the side of his mistress, he still has no intention of quarreling with La Ferraillon. The girl noted that she was not talking about this now because the conversation was about children. Those gathered still could not believe it. They wanted to talk to their children so that the whole truth would be revealed. The heroine was about to do just that, but then the Count intervened again. He was against it. It would have been even worse if they had seen them and asked about everything. The boy was outraged that they were treating him like that, but he was stopped. There was a child in the class who promised to be a witness. They were in the same class and everyone there knew what was going on. Obviously, the man was threatening the Duchess herself through the children. This was already beyond the pale. Even if you call the children, the parents will still only chase after the answers they need. Loremba was the only one who was kind. He was so busy with work that he didn't realize that he had missed out on raising his son. The brunette clicked his tongue at him because he had given up right now instead of going all the way. Her Excellency has heard enough. She will report everything else in writing. The gentleman heard from the fourth princess that the Duchess has no options but to divorce. Then it is unclear why she rejects everyone else. The woman stopped Moulton, who wanted to ask him to keep quiet. The situation was different from what was with the maids if the lady crushed them like the Archduchess. After the divorce, they would strike at her. The beauty also understood that it was her fault that Selfie was studying at the academy. After that, she had to sort everything out. She said that it was none of their business what would happen next. The man began to shout that the conversation was not over. His son could not mock the Duke's heir. Demands were heard to call Selfie. When the lady was about to leave, Taddeo entered the room. His face was stern. He asked if he had understood correctly what he had heard. The woman did not understand why the young man came here. She did not dare to intervene because she wanted to know what would happen next. The Count began to shout that the gentleman had misunderstood something. The shout had already echoed through the corridor. It was impossible not to understand. The Duchess did not understand the situation, and again they began to demand that the heir be called because he knows that the aristocrats are not guilty of anything. When they were asked how they could ask for such a thing, the young man began to explain that there had been a misunderstanding and that his son knew his place. Denaya intervened to confirm that it was not intentional. They had no reason to go against the great war hero. The Count was so worried that he shifted everything onto Baron Loremba, who admitted everything, so it is his son who needs to be interrogated. This time, the green-eyed man did not intend to remain silent. Everything happened because of the rumors spread by Trellan's son. The boy heard everything from him. It was he who walked around and chatted left and right about how Selfie was not the Duke's own. Blue-Eyed screamed, how dare he accuse him. Everything happened at the speed of light. Taddeo drew his sword and stopped it next to the Count's face. The knight stopped His Excellency. They left the room. The head ordered to lock both the children and the parents there. He asked the woman where Selfius was. The girl understood that the hero was angry, but asked him to try to calm down, at least to calm his breathing in order to calmly talk to the boy. In the evening, the young man was brought to His Excellency's office. Ferriciotti was about to leave, but the brunette silently asked to stay. He was scared. The gentleman asked if it was true that his son had suffered humiliation. The young man said that it was not true. He did not know what happened, but overall, things were good at the academy. It seemed that someone was going to tarnish the Duke's honor. He would suppress rumors from now on. Taddeo lowered his head. He made the boy his successor for a reason he didn't even want to pass on his family as an inheritance. The brunette asked why the guy was still hesitating. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. Selfius lowered his eyes and in fear again asked for forgiveness for having undermined the Duke's dignity with his problem. The man couldn't hold back and shouted, "Selfie shouldn't hide something like that." The boy knew that the gentleman wouldn't like the news. He simply had no choice but to remain silent. The hero knew that they left him at the villa because they didn't want to see him. Even now the master doesn't admit it, although the successor brought him to this state. La Ferraillon was indeed bullied, but it was bearable. Entering the academy was also his choice, and none of the teachers knew. The boy does not understand at all why this discussion is necessary when you can calmly move on. Red-Eyed asked if his father needed someone to replace his successor. He apologized for the disappointment and promised that he would leave again. The gentleman turned away. He made the boy his successor for a wrong reason and tried to become his family. The young man was sent to the villa so that he could grow up in a free environment and not get sick. It seemed that it would be better that way. Cepheus still didn't understand that when the Duke came to the villa, he completely ignored his heir every time as if he was disgusted by the conversation. The brunette apologized. Now he understands that he was wrong. The boy began to cry. Silence fell in the room, which weighed on everyone. By the time Farashati left the room, half the auction had passed. Daniel asked what had happened and reported that so far everything was going well. Gloria learned of the incident through the Duchess and the Marquis. She said that she would lead the party upon learning of the Duke's return and the situation. It was decided to first end the party, and only then talk and sort everything out. Towards evening, Her Excellency began to be thanked for the fun that the guests had had. The woman asked the teacher for some time, then she went to the family council. It couldn't be real that some people were against the duchy. It seemed like they were taking them for fools. Those nobles were sent away in the morning. Moulton met with the knights. They discussed their route before that they were sent to catch someone. There was no time to rest because they also had to arrive a little before the event started. The rest of the tasks were left to the elite knights. They caught the people who were the targets. All that's left is to deal with them, and there won't be any problems. One of the men noticed that the Duke seemed to love his wife very much. As soon as he received a letter from her, he returned almost immediately. It seemed that he was a man without blood and tears, but no. The knights who were in the room at the time of the incident, if one of them had not restrained the gentleman, he would have killed the Count. That man was truly ignorant. There was no point in talking about it anymore. In the hall, the meeting was deciding how to solve the problem with Cepheus. It would be possible to solve it within the academy. Felix asked if there was a need for his return. The lady suggested finding a peaceful solution. If this becomes a conflict between families, it will be very bad. The Lefurions demonstrate influence not only on the battlefield, but also in social circles. So the image of a family that suppresses the nobles can be formed. Now, as Baka left, he could agree that the girl was truly an amazing person. She was able to express her opinion in the company of those who were higher in status than her. That same morning, the lady escorted the boy to the academy. She allowed him not to go, but the young man could not miss it. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to make up for lost time. The woman wanted to pick up the young man after school, but he refused. The lady was already busy. She did not need to worry about it looking at the Duke. The hero simply went into the carriage. Selphie continued to avoid the man. He even ate separately to distance himself as much as possible. The brunette also looked a little upset. That night, Gloria seemed to think for a moment and then accepted her daughter-in-law's opinion. A council was gathered at the academy. They decided how to solve the problem. Trelin's son and Denier were expelled. The Count asked for protection from the temple. That day he was obviously too afraid of the Duke's attacks. Those gathered did not consider this the best solution. Rumors are circulating in social circles that the Minister of Finance has gone bankrupt. All the proceedings lasted about a week. The woman asked herself if everything had happened so quickly. If Selphie had not been the Duke's heir, it would not have been a problem in the first place if that had been the case. The beauty knew that everything ended well, but she did not understand why she was thinking about such a thing. The brunette at the academy approached the guy who told the Duchess everything. Apparently the boy only found out about everything. Then the blonde said that he did not do it because of the guy. He was really annoyed by those noisy guys. Cepheus reported that it only became harder for him. A boy appeared behind him. He was also in the group that was constantly attacking. Trelin's son met them in the hallway. He assumed that his former friend was still hanging out with the guy because he was no longer on the same level as his acquaintance. The blonde suggested that he take the opportunity to prove that he was indeed the Duke's heir. He should do at least something in this situation. The father said that his family's business was already on the verge of bankruptcy. The boy could save it. The hero did not understand what this meant, so he asked again. As the Count said, the young man is an unwanted person in his own family, but as an heir he has prudence. The green-eyed man said that it turned out he had decided to drop out of the academy. The blonde asked why he had been bullied too, which was why he hadn't been expelled right away. The boy wanted to atone for his sins in this way. At home, he was going to learn the trade from his father. He hoped that everything would be fine with the Duke, too. The lesson ended. Very soon it was too long. The imperial minister reported that everything that was discussed was quickly resolved. The boy just came out and saw how the Duchess was talking to him. The woman turned and greeted the children. The minister turned to the blonde man standing next to Cepheus, and then everything became clear. The brunette asked if it was true that his father was an administrative official, and the boy asked with displeasure if his friend even knew his name. Before that, a little earlier, they discussed the council. It became obvious that Farashati had joined it and was trying to change something there. Judging by the fact that the woman had come before she valued the boy very much, the brunette needed to understand that she alone was not capable of changing everything by 360 degrees. Every day, as if it were work, the father goes to the imperial administration expecting information on this matter. The girl did not ask him about it. The young man involuntarily remembered his childhood. Moulton always said that the Duke treasured him very much, but he did not understand why then he was constantly ignored. Since that night, the uncle has come to the academy every day to meet the boy. He awkwardly greets him or tries to start a conversation first. The young man did not know if he could trust the hero. It was all difficult. If the Duchess had not been with them, then he probably would not have been able to tell everything about his true feelings. There was still time left before the year was up. The hero needed to somehow grab hold of the woman so that everything would be a little better in the future. At the meeting, Selphie was finally informed of everything that was happening. It turned out that the Duchess had already been exposed to the Duke's blood twice, and she was still alive. The young man did not believe that some experiments were conducted on the girl. If the boy had been in the woman's place, he would not have stayed with Terdeo either. Now the divorce could definitely not be prevented. The commotion began with a morning examination. The doctor was told that menstrual pain had recently become more severe. Usually everything was normal. The woman was going to conduct some research but also hand over the matter to Phoenix. He had been observing the girl for much longer and knows her body. The beauty thought about it. She was always interested in how the women of the Lafarian family go through their periods. After all, their blood is poisonous. The girl decided not to ask unnecessary questions and later went to breakfast where the man said that he had already heard about the morning inspection. Of course, the girl was asked how many times she died from Lafarian's blood. If you take into account every detail, then there were only 3 incidents. She had to tell Selphie everything. The boy reacted too strangely. He screamed, asking how the gentleman could do this. The Duchess could simply not wake up. The man wanted to know if the hero had apologized, and the girl intervened, saying that that was exactly what had happened, but Selphius was still angry and didn't want to think about anything. From that day on, the young man changed in particular. He gave advice to Islet not to approach the Archduke. He still talked to his uncle, but it was already completely different. A huge amount of anger was building up inside the boy, which he was directing in the wrong direction. The brunette, on the contrary, seemed to be angry when his son was angry. The girl didn't know if she could agree it was better for the boy to express emotions than not to express them at all. The man remembered that the lady had previously asked to show her ancient books. Rebecca led the woman to the library. There were many offices in the duchy, and there should have been a decent amount of books there too. The girl was happy that the lady had a day off. She also needed to rest and not dwell on her problems. Having run away, the maid promised that she would definitely prepare some tea that would help her relax a little. When the lady entered the library, she was surprised by the number of ancient books. She took one to start reading, but on the way out, she accidentally came across a wall with portraits. Next to the photo of Terdeo was a picture of the first Duke, but it was empty. He must have been the guy's grandfather because Gloria, his wife, is the hero's grandmother. The beauty asked Moulton about the portrait. It turned out that the lady had turned it over. Now she is the eldest in the family, so everyone listens to her orders. For some reason, everyone on the wall had more than one wife. It was impossible to live with them for a long time. There were many who died before the birth of children or during childbirth. Moulton suggested looking at portraits of other people. There was also an image of Selphius's father. Strangely, his hair was scarlet. Surely the child's mother had black hair. Evening came. The girl looked at everything for too long and still didn't have time to read the book. She climbed into bed and was suddenly surprised because the Duke was nearby. The lady was so surprised that she almost fell off the bed, but they pulled her back up in time. It was just luck. Her shirt almost fell off her shoulders. It would have been a terrible end. The man stood up without a word and was about to leave. The girl herself invited him to sleep in the same room, and now it would look as if she had kicked him out. The young man did not leave. He just went out to get a hot water bottle and put it on her stomach. The lady said that she was in pain, so they took care of her. So as not to talk further, she decided to fall asleep. The brunette mentioned that he heard the news from Moulton. The girl didn't say anything because then selfie was more important. The heroine believed that there was nothing wrong with the boy looking angrily at his uncle lately. The truth was that it was the Duke's mistake. He asked her to stop worrying and sleep better. Phoenix came into the office. He waited until lunch and visited the Duchess. He is going to say what he couldn't say last time because of Selfie's interference. The young man just wanted to make sure of the pain that had not been there before. They knew nothing about the curse, so it would hardly help in the diagnosis. The doctor asked if the lady drank the tea she prescribed for her. She nodded. Most likely the pain was due to the stress that the woman was experiencing. It turns out that in the Leferian family, women slow down their cycles with medication, and if menstruation coincides with an attack, you can even die. The woman thought that she would not live that long, but all thanks to Phoenix Gloria is an exception. She lived longer than everyone else and also gave birth to 2 children. Even during Selfie's birth, they were worried that things would go wrong, which is why the doctor won't give birth to the child because he wants to live longer. Phoenix interrupted the lady's thoughts. He also does not understand how Cersei's child was born and lived for so long. It is very strange. They are conducting investigations into the mortality rate during childbirth. It would be more correct to say that everyone dies. There are not many exceptions. At the academy, Selfie finally found his friend, who was wandering around somewhere again, leaving his acquaintance alone. As usual, the boy was met with aggression. He assumed that it was because of what had been said earlier. Selfius's dad was really handsome, and their family would last a long time. The young man suggested finding a way to the woman's heart in order to somehow soften her. It would still be possible to keep the heroine, it just wouldn't be that easy. However, the hero reported that it seemed that the Duchess had already arrived. It turned out that at that time she had gone to meet the princess. The blonde called the woman because she had something to tell. The family asked her to pass on something important, and an envelope from the Zackhart estate appeared on the table. It seemed that this was a painful topic for the beauty. The princess noticed that she also had problems because she had lost her assistant. Because of the lady's slyness, many people, including Her Majesty herself, were disgraced and embroiled in some rumors that have now spread everywhere. It was more honorable for the Count to die by the Duke's sword. Now the entrance to the secular world is closed to him because the girl destroyed his family. They did nothing wrong. The woman did not want to continue with meaningless news. If the interlocutor knows all the details of what happened, it is not worth talking about it. The green-eyed woman noticed that it was strange to behave like this with a child she had only known for 6 months. Perhaps this was a strategy to stay in the duchy. Farashati should not have behaved the way she did. The situation only made the heir pathetic, showing him in a pitiful light. It is true that Selfius has no parents. Moulton said that the boy was once interested in his roots, but after learning that his mother had left the mansion, he no longer asked. The woman was not going to give in to the princess. Her husband adopted a boy, and she was going to become his mother. The blonde asked not to get attached to them. One day, the lady would leave the estate. The Duchess said that she would sort everything out herself and went out. Near the door she met Selfius. They went out into the street. Sitting down in the garden, the girl asked from what point the boy had been listening. The lady had arrived too early. It seemed to her that rather than be late, it would be better if she arrived earlier. The carriage arrived, and the lady was about to get up when she was stopped. The young man asked if she really would become his mother. She had to apologize. There was no point in presumptuously taking this place. It turned out that the boy liked it. On the contrary, he knows that it might be burdensome, but he would like to call Farashati mom at least while she is in the duchy. Finally, they went to the Duke. Terdeo had just arrived, so he didn't wait long again. Selfie was silent until he said that he wanted to go in the carriage alone. When the boy left, he called the lady mother on the way home. The girl explained the situation to her husband. Silence hung between them. The lady decided to read the letter. She was asked what was written there. It seemed that it was from the family, and as soon as they arrived at the mansion, she would sort everything out. The brunette decided to take one look at the paper, and seeing some scribbles in red, he immediately threw it out the window. It was disgusting to him. It turned out that the letter was not given from the Zackhart estate. Whatever it was, the princess was crazy, and it was she who wrote something like that. All this was, of course, strange. The letter could have been given by the family, but for some reason the Duke was sure that he had received something similar before. The lady thought about Selfie again. She understood that if the boy called her mom, everyone would be surprised that same night her fears were confirmed. Literally everyone had the same reaction, both the family and the servants. They were surprised that the woman was so calm about this. Rebecca did not understand what kind of relationship was developing. For Aelith she was a sister, and for the young master she was a mother. Selphie was the first to tell that he had decided to call the Duchess mother, and she even allowed it. The situation had escalated too quickly. Daniel intervened first. This could not be allowed because the contract was only for a year. The boy understood that it was burdensome, but he knew that this was the only way to keep her. He asked everyone to cooperate. The assistant agreed with this option because he also wanted Farashati to stay forever. It was already morning, so the young man got ready for the academy. The woman said goodbye to him. The child was smiling and she didn't know what to do next. It wasn't that she didn't know her feelings. It was raining outside, and over the course of a week, everyone had gotten used to Selphie calling Mrs. Mother. The night's overnight stay was determined in advance as the woman said the consumables were fully collected. Daniel couldn't keep quiet. He knew he was lucky to be with the lady on such an important day. The assistant was about to ask how the conversation with the lawyer went, but then the maid arrived. A guest had arrived from the Zakhart estate. The uncle came without warning. He looked worried and asked to talk, sitting the girl down on a chair. Immediately after the conversation, the lady went to her husband's office. She asked for forgiveness, but heard that the second group had arrived. Wanted to know if Countess Zakhart was on the list. The woman wanted to know something about her purchases from the past. The uncle said that he met his brother's servant at the cemetery. Before that, the young man had constantly avoided his master and then asked him not to come. At night, he himself came to Zakhart to tell him something. The man was glad that he was thrown out of the estate that night. The countess noticed that the servant was tired, so she sent him to rest. At that time, he was afraid that the accusations would fall on him, so he remained silent. The brunette wanted to offer his sincere apologies. The man provided all the papers where the truth was revealed. He knew the lady's father better than anyone else. The hero suffered from heart disease. His body was so weak that the doctor stayed at home. A servant stood guard in front of his room every day in case of emergency. If the father rang the bell so that he could hear at any moment about the emergency. Despite this, the lady thought that the death could not be prevented in any way. The man said that the brother had quarreled with the countess before his death, that they had a long conversation on the last night. More details are needed, but the man doesn't trust the woman anyway. The documents showed what the lady was afraid to see her father's death was not caused by illness. It was something else. The girl could not stand it and falling to the floor began to sob. The Duke ran to her to calm her down, but he was not sure if he would succeed. Later the man poured tea. He suggested to rest a little. The lady's face was blank, but she immediately refused any possible options. The hero showed the lady the report. There were dates and transactions. Most of the blood was thrown out, because without the necessary equipment it spoiled immediately. From early spring until the day of the cherry blossom's full bloom, those who died at this time, like the murderers during the procession, bore the marks of death by poison or deliberate assassination. The time of purchase of the poison was approximately close to the day of death of the girl's father. If the lady had not fled the county, she would have been killed, too. Schiff treated the lady in a certain way, but she believed that her mother was different. The maiden regretted that she could not help her father in any way. When Farashati found out everything, she ran away. The Duke caught up with her, and although there were attempts to fight her off, he declared that he would help with the matter. The lady believed that this occupation belonged only to her, but she no longer had the right to say such things. After all, they had become a family. Daniel came to his father from an informant. It became known that the countess was preparing a claim for inheritance. She could not calm down. The man also heard that the woman killed the count. She aimed at wealth, completely forgetting about humanity. Moulton knew everything but did not tell earlier because he was afraid that the butler would raise unnecessary fuss. He always had a wide range of emotions. The girl collected everything that could help the matter. The man helped her in everything, and then they came to talk to find out how the situation would develop further. The maid ran to Madame and reported that the Imperial Knights had arrived and that they had arrested Madame for the murder of Count Zakhart. Reina ran away from the castle without saying goodbye to anyone, and the maidens assumed that the matter was too urgent and could not be delayed. The next day, news spread that the Countess had been arrested, and they said that the official trial would take place in 3 weeks. Some supported the girl. Her ex-husband committed suicide due to bankruptcy, and her second husband suffered from a chronic illness. The first noble court in a long time should take place if you think about it. Everyone is just waiting for this to sort out the situation again in more detail. The accuser who filed the lawsuit belongs to the duchy, and it seems that the Countess is at a disadvantage. For the first time, the Leferions intervene in the situation. The whole matter will be revealed during the trial. Everything should be fine. The court under the leadership of the emperor was not large but very grandiose. At the appointed time, all the people who were waiting for the moment of the beginning gathered. The event was some kind of dispute between stepmother and daughter. Reina came running. She did not expect such a blow in the back from her sister. It was good that there was no public. The lawyer had already said that the jury was chosen from nobles who had no connection with the family of the emperor or the duke. The hearing began. Lillian claimed her innocence, but was also informed that her whereabouts on the night of the Count's death were in doubt. The lawyer stepped forward and asked if the current Zakhart really believed the words of the man who had come running to tell him the truth. The Countess should be believed. She even raised someone else's child. There were frequent quarrels in the family, but this is not proof that she could harm her husband. The next doctor to be called was from the county, and he reported that the gentleman had died of illness, the pain in his heart being the same as usual. Reina knew everything would be fine. Even the doctor was on their side. She turned towards her sister but was met with her cold expression. Earlier, the uncle asked the girl if she was going to accuse her stepmother. They should not stand still. With the help of the duke, she could be brought to trial. The man did not understand how it was possible to punish a woman without evidence. If something went wrong, then that servant would take all the blame. Farashati had been looking for some way, something that would allow them to win the case for a long time. The reason why the lady then asked her husband for the account book was because her heart was filled with doubts. To keep everything under control, the lady moved the family into an extension. She was afraid that her uncle would be in danger, but it was still unclear whether she would be able to win. There was no point in acting unless it was possible to win. The lady knew that she could show the sources with poison, but then the Leferion family would be in danger. The family is not low-ranking. Even if they come under attack, they should deal with it themselves. The woman did not want to worry about them. Her father also died from their blood. Leaving the room, the lady pounced on Selfie. She had not shown up for several days. The boy was worried even though he knew that the lady was busy. The brunette brought a tray of food to eat a little. The lady had a strange expression on her face, and then she was called not by name but called Mom. The heroine understood the humor that she could not betray those who had become her family. The conversation with the princess echoed in her head. Eyelet managed to learn to read. She even wrote a short story on a piece of paper. The girl stroked the children's heads and said that this was great news. If the secret of the curse is revealed because of the ledger, then no matter how great the duchy is, they will not escape extinction. At the meeting, the heroine said that she had decided not to use the book as evidence. It would be strange. She asked to find evidence for the court. The lawyer said that the lady had married a sick man and raised his child for almost 20 years. It was exhausting. Lillian, an unfortunate and wonderful woman, was asked to provide evidence against the one who sacrificed literally everything for the sake of her family. The same man came forward, and many witnesses confirmed that Countess Zakhart had visited the shop where the medicines were sold several times. The doctor tried to make sure that no one would arise. He could help the girl, but then he had to stay at home, and the woman created all the conveniences for this. Since the doctor had no servants and was sometimes assisted by Lillian, then he must have known what medicine was regularly given to the master. When the prescription was handed over, the young man was surprised but decided to control himself. He said that it was true. He wrote it. There are no problems if used correctly for people with severe pain. It is a completely normal painkiller. The Leferion family's lawyer handed over a piece of paper. The problem was that the lady was buying more medications and more often than the doctor prescribed. The painkiller she had recently purchased was not prescribed according to the pharmacist's instructions. She had asked for a medicine with a stronger effect. The lawyer began to object, but everything continued. Everyone in the mansion knew that with each passing day, the man slept longer and longer, all because of the drugs from the documents. It is clear that the Count took more drugs than prescribed. In addition to narcotic painkillers and sleeping pills, Zackhart was no ordinary person but a patient with heart disease. They started asking the doctor if he really thought that such a quantity of drugs would not pose a danger to life, but he still said that it could become a problem. Before this, Lillian told her lawyer that everything would be fine because she could not expose herself to being accused in any case. The woman could not give up just like that, however the Countess did everything only to ease her husband's pain. You cannot kill by giving painkillers. That night the attack could have been avoided. This sin lies on the shoulders of the servant who fell asleep without hearing the bell saying that he was very tired. It has already been said that the Count's assistant was the first to admit that he was unable to closely monitor the situation. The person who had entrusted him as an exceptional assistant to do a job that could not be done by even a few servants knew what she was doing, and that was Lillian. His lordship passed sentence. The woman was forbidden any contact with members of the Zackhart family, and the mansion that had passed into her inheritance was taken away. She was prepared for 35 years of hard labor. After the meeting, Raina went after her sister and began to ask for forgiveness for having done something wrong. The girl should have known that her mother did not kill her father. With Schiff, everything was clear. If a lady doesn't love him, she can treat him like that, but her family is a completely different matter. The knights arrived. She dragged the girl away while she continued to cry, asking how this could happen. Raina asked to come back and say that Mom was not to blame for anything. Without listening to anything, the lady headed for the exit. The Duke could not help but notice that the girl had red eyes. She had clearly been crying before. In the carriage, the Duchess asked to find out in whose jurisdiction the monastery was located, where the stepmother would go. She needed clear information. In fact, the lady most likely knew the answer to her question herself. One must not lose vigilance, thinking that she got what she deserved. One way or another, the goal of driving the stepmother out of the county was achieved. While the lady was away, Daniel prepared the room and cleaned it up. The girl thanked him, and soon they were supposed to bring her lunch. The lady put her things on the bed, knowing the truth. The husband used the room next to the woman's office. It was awkward to look straight into the face all the time. Once Lillian made her decision, she tried with all her might to take her father's life. But it turned out that most likely it was not because of the blood, but also because of the drugs. The man said that the heroin could leave the estate. There was no longer any need to fulfill the contract, but he wanted to be allowed to help with the defense. At night in prison, Lillian was met by a lawyer and her daughter. The woman did not understand why she was not told anything. She asked to be honest with her, and eventually strong evidence emerged. The Imperial Knights were under pressure from the Duke, and they searched all the pharmacies the lady visited. The brunette didn't think it would be a problem. The prosecutor was skilled and would never have missed the information collected in this way. Even if the girls had prepared well, everything would have been the same. The Countess herself brought this sentence upon herself. The princess also came, but the lawyer ran away in a rage. Raina did not understand what to do. Her sister had ruined everything, but the lady herself had ordered it to be done this way. The Countess did not kill the Count with medicine. The blonde nodded and opened the box, which contained a vessel with blood which most likely became a weapon. Uncle told Ferrashati that it was better for her to remain in the Archduchy. Now he understood why the maiden made such a choice, just a little more, and she would have found herself in trouble. After all, the man decided to take care of the county for at least a year. The servants who obeyed the mistress can be held accountable due to the evidence presented by the lawyer. A few days ago, 2 lateral line locators left after their departure. The mansion became so quiet that it was even unpleasant. Rebecca also suggested leaving. The girl equipped the beauty and gathered everyone they needed. The heroine did not understand why they suddenly decided to go somewhere and how it came to this. One of the men said that he would try to correct his previous shame this time, and he was so motivated that he decided to come instead of the novice knight. The brunette introduced himself as Ponter Will. He is one of the elite of His Excellency, the Duke. It is an honor for him to accompany the girl, and he will protect her. Rebecca asked to listen to the warning. The fact that they were all members of the Duke's estate must remain a secret. No one should know about it. Her ladyship will be the Viscount's daughter, who is traveling outside the capital to see the Summer Flower Festival, which has caught her interest. Knights plays the role of not a friend, but a baroness who just wants to be near her. Sir Raymond will be a servant Ponter asked to also be an assistant to be closer. The trial ended not long ago. The lady did not know if they could afford something like this. It was difficult for her to be in the mansion, so she accepted the offer. Despite this, she feels guilty. Farashati and her companions settled in the hotel. Rebecca ran in the morning to support the lady. There was not much time. I would like to visit all the places that catch my eye. On the 4th day of the journey, the maiden was tired from all the various events. The schedule was too tight, although she was grateful that everything was specially prepared. For some reason, the boat stopped in the middle of the river. It simply didn't float anymore. Knights didn't understand what happened. The knight remained on the shore. A blondie approached him, who noticed that the vehicle was stuck. As a result, they were able to get out onto the shore, but only all wet. The girl was not in the best mood because of what happened. They met with Adeus, who immediately realized that the disguise was not the best. Even though it was an unpleasant situation, he did nothing wrong. The knights watched him and eventually realized that everything was fine. If he had bad intentions, the Duke would not have given permission for the meeting. Adeus's previous injuries were already in order. Finally, in the evening, the woman came to the hotel. Finally, she could rest from all this fuss. Not long ago, the brunette reported that the lady could stay outside the capital for a while to get some rest. His lordship went to meet the emperor and was told that no formal greetings were necessary. The blonde asked if the child they had taken in was doing well. He had found out from the documents but had never seen him in person. The man hasn't seen his wife either. For 6 months, the young man has been repeating the same thing, saying that the beauty is very busy. The gentleman asked about children, but the guy refused. He already had an heir. His brother passed away early. The more children, the better. Having an heir is the main duty of the family, and from the very beginning they were treated as imperial persons. The emperor doesn't ask for much. He helped at the academy and even in court. The Duke only wanted justice and doesn't understand where the problem came from. These were his daughter's wards, and he did not take her side just for the girl's sake, while the young man is now only engaged in military training. In recent days, there has been a strange atmosphere coming from the ambassadors, and rebels are sneaking into the empire to cause trouble. Every dialogue between the man and the Duke is disappointing. Under the pretext of a shared dinner, the gentleman will no longer provide support. His Majesty constantly regrets that there is no portrait of the current Duke, so he ordered this to be corrected as soon as possible. It is better to see a royal artist demonstrate his skills than to go to others. The stone statue is broken, but the painting needs to be saved. The painting schedule will take 3 days. The rest will be left to the artist's discretion. The man ordered to reduce it to 2 days and left. The first day began. It was time to make sketches. The masters asked if everything was going well with the progress of the work. He asked not to be distracted. The princess arrived to observe. The man wanted to leave. He was stopped. His Majesty hopes that his daughter will not be offended anymore. Just think how many problems a woman has after someone refuses to marry her. The valet next to the lady had behaved differently before the hero decided not to be distracted, but he felt uncomfortable. The woman laughed loudly. She made the young man feel even worse. He came to his estate. At the entrance, he was met by Daniel, who asked how the day had gone at the imperial palace. The Duchess was due to return tomorrow. On the way home, the horses were tired. It was necessary to make a short stop so that everything would be okay. The assistant asked to sit down for a moment while he asked Joseph to change the horses. The 2 days that Adeus was a guide were intense. The schedule was balanced and interesting. Adeus got out of the carriage to get some air, all because of the flowers that were too fragrant. By the time they finished talking, the assistants had finally lit a fire to warm themselves up. The brunette suggested sitting down. Adeus was also offered to come, but for some reason he refused. He doesn't like the smell of burning. Rebecca dragged him closer to the fire against his will. He should not refuse Her Excellency. That was ignorance. By chance, the sleeve was lifted up and there was a wound and bruises on the arm. Obviously, the body is prone to all kinds of marks. Still, the man sat down on a log that was nearby. Despite his problems, the young man takes good care of himself and often spends time at home. All Knights did was scold her friend. If she continued to behave like this, she might not communicate with him anymore. When the knight asked the girl how they met, she told a whole huge story. While the conversation was going on, the blue-eyed man lowered his head. He seems like a good guy. The Duchess thanked him for being the tour guide. The woman asked why the man hated the Duke, and knights became active again, asking how that was possible. If the weak heard this, they would chase him with stones. Rebecca is also a noble woman, but she is poor, so she cannot wear the same clothes as a man. When the heroes arrived back at the estate, they realized that something had happened because the lights in front of the gates weren't even turned on. Daniel apologized for meeting the girl late on the last day in the estate. There were almost no servants in the mansion. Rebecca was surprised that everyone was on holiday at such a time, and the Duchess began to worry a little. Knights was also asked to pack her things. She seemed tired after a long trip. They were getting ready to leave. His Excellency is a little irritated today. I'll have to leave after all. As soon as everyone left, the guy reported that the gentleman had had an attack and his condition had worsened. Selfie came running towards him. He immediately started asking if the man would feel a little better. Mr. Phoenix said that he would soon feel better. The seizures that occurred the night before last stopped at dawn, but Terdeo has not recovered to this day. Looking at the faces of the doctor and Gloria, the woman realized that the situation was not the best. She became scared to think that the guy might not come to his senses. The girl visited Daniel's office in the evening where he was smoking. There were too many tasks and documents that needed to be sorted out. Mrs. Gloria has taken on the responsibilities, but she can't cope. At such moments, work piles up on top of each other. A place had been prepared for the Duke at the meeting in the castle, and a minister from the palace arrived to inquire why he was absent. There is no one normal in that place, and when the master is absent, everything becomes worse. Even a man, when he stays in the castle for more than a day, becomes strange. Last time there was also an attack, but not so terrible. After that day, he became quite sensitive. All his maids were afraid to be near him and asked him to leave while His Excellency became harsh, probably because letters were coming about his marriage to the princess. Then it looked like the man was poisoned. Strange that a person resistant to poisons literally collapsed. The hero asked to keep the situation a secret. The Duke ordered to remain silent. Even Moulton doesn't know about it because it's better that way. Then Theo had just arrived in the capital. The blue-eyed man also remembered what happened after the wedding with the Duchess. The hero remembered that the young man felt better as soon as he began to spend more time with his wife. Then the man came to the emperor and he told him that there would be a wedding with the princess. He saw that he had a worthy partner in front of him. The lady will not have to worry about her illness. The imperial physician assured her that there could be no problems with the heir. When the young man refused, the gentleman was disappointed. After all, it would have been more polite to at least refuse after a personal meeting. That evening, the princess's assistant came to the Duke and said that although he had no right to speak like that, he admired the gentleman. He handed over some drink that left a strange taste in his mouth, after which he went to rest. In the middle of the night, the man woke up. His body was in incredible pain, and the princess was sitting on top of him. She was smiling. The woman said that she wanted children from Theo. Then he ran away, but now he had a dream about that same horror. The brunette accidentally fell out of bed, at which time his wife ran into the room. Farashati was worried about him. The lady asked if everything was okay and sipped a glass of water. The man quietly asked why the girl was next to him. When asked what the lady was doing there, she decided to call Mr. Phoenix. She came running in the middle of the night and started asking him to do something. The woman was worried about what the manager had said, so she came to check. It's good that despite his poor condition, the man still woke up. Then the lady returned to the room and saw that during this time the brunette had even managed to wash himself. The heroine said that she returned to the estate 3 days ago. The lady did not know whether it was possible for a man to move so easily. The husband's face is pale. In any case, he will have to eat so that everything is okay. The hero asked to wait. He had urgent business. The nose started bleeding again. At that moment, Phoenix arrived. He was angry. If Theo wanted to die, he could continue working. The brunette stood over his soul for 30 minutes, until the gentleman ate everything. The nosebleed is a symptom caused by fatigue. The woman returned to the room. She was really scared when the young man stood up. She asked again if it was true that he hadn't hurt himself. The young man turned away, surprised that the girl had returned, and his face expressed strange feelings. Farashati assumed that this reaction was because she was too close. They had never been so close. The lady decided to get up, but she was stopped. The hero thought that perhaps his wife would be uncomfortable next to him. It's not that the young man is unpleasant, it's just that the lady was immersed in her own affairs and didn't know how to address him properly. The man wanted to start speaking, but he was asked to raise his head first. That would be more correct. First of all, I'll have to calm down. The lady will come with the manager tomorrow morning, and until then, nothing can be done. Until now, training has been carried out by Moulton. The Duchess will be able to fill out the expense book herself. In the morning, the lady regretted her decision. There were far more documents than expected. Naturally, a man should have been careful, but a man was raised as a nobleman and therefore has no feelings. Even the lady's father, who cared about his servants if he found himself in the same situation, would probably not disturb the assistant for as long as possible. Blue-Eyed reported that things with trade are not going smoothly. Circia sent documents. Even when Farashati was the heir to the county, she did not know everything about the family's affairs. She would have liked to have been more informed. The girl noticed another folder with documents. It seemed that there was data about decorative items in the mansion. There was information about a lot of different items. It seems that instead of distributing things for purchase, they focused on arrangement. The man snatched the papers and rudely asked how the Duchess could look at other people's things without permission. Daniel nevertheless asked the lady not to look at the Duke's materials. She nodded. She had no choice in any case. Someone knocked on the door. The young gentleman and lady arrived, and the paperwork was finally finished. The guy asked not to tell anyone about those papers. Farashati realized that there was something very important there. Maybe it was because the boy had just woken up, but all the emotions were visible on his face. It was a little strange to see. The man looked like a different person, as suddenly many different expressions appeared on his face. The assistant handed the woman more documents. The blue-eyed man asked if everything was okay. His expression was strange. At the table, the three discussed the future. Selfie was still too young to become the heir. If there was an emergency in the future, Phoenix would be next. The man was against it. They had already discussed everything. Terdeo had successfully overcome the stage and was still alive. The boy's eldest nephew also died during the attack. No one knew about it, but there is no guarantee that this will not happen again. Farashati couldn't get what she had heard out of her head. She had no idea that Phoenix was Gloria's son. It was natural that Circia and the Duke should call him their uncle, but the lady had never heard him call the lady mother. The lady asked if the Duke was in the annex. He had already left there, and went to the main building. Probably the minister from the main palace had arrived. The words that something might have happened in the royal palace kept coming back to me. After all, it seemed like he had been poisoned back then. The girl decided to go to his lordship. She went down and saw a man lying on the floor who had been thrown out of the room. A rough voice asked why the minister thought he had the right to treat the boy freely. The Duke didn't seem like the type to show such an attitude. His Majesty sent a man to check on the well-being of the master, and this is insulting. A week ago, the hero was already at an audience. The head of the knights is supposed to be in charge of catching the rebels, but in the end he spends all his time in bars and the work falls on the shoulders of the young man. The minister was dragged out by servants so that there would be no more problems, and the emperor was to be told that if he wanted to keep an eye on the Duke, it would be better to find someone less annoying. Later, the Duchess came in and asked if everything was okay. The young man said that it was okay that he had kicked out the minister. When they went out into the garden, the lady asked where the man was going. It turned out he just wanted to walk together. The woman said again that she would not tell anyone about her personal documents, and Farashati felt awkward. The brunette asked why the lady had come at such a late hour. It seemed as if she wanted to ask something. The woman was simply worried. The lady was there for no more than 5 minutes and was about to leave when the man woke up. Everything was like this. Suddenly, the hero asked how the recent trip went. It turned out that he liked everything. It was interesting. When they stopped near the shop, the lady decided to mention the fourth princess, and the man immediately froze. The girl said that the lady was different from who she was now in her past life. She was not like that. An investigation was conducted. The princess, just like Farashati, returned to the past due to Lafirion's poison. It seems that the woman was poisoned, although it seems that she accumulated the poison in herself because she had been ill for a long time. Such thoughts can be had by a person who has been ill for a long time. Although the girl's father did not die because of poison, he was definitely dependent on poisonous drugs. When the brunette had previously examined the princess, he had found nothing. She was an ordinary person. Ever since the master heard about the return of Farashati and Ailette, he began to search more. He searched for examples. The doctors are cooperating with the gentlemen. They were ordered to investigate everything and understand who was behaving suspiciously since last spring. It's funny to rely on a mystical phenomenon, but once the results are known, everything will be better. Cepheus arrived in the room. His friend invited him. He asked to go together. It would be much better that way. The woman agreed. In any case, it wasn't such a long trip. They set off in the carriage in the morning and very soon arrived at the place where they were met by a nice family. Viscount Otis and his wife greeted the Duke and Duchess, and Marvin also came out. Apparently they had already met the guy. The family was going to be escorted to the hall. Ferrasciati was glad that she was lucky enough to come to a small parents' meeting. The woman said that their son kept telling them he wanted to invite a friend, and they were glad it finally happened. I wondered who Marvin looked like, but he looks like his parents. The same wonderful and smart boy. The minister started talking about something. In any case, other countries agree with the news that the empire is waging a brutal war. The blonde isn't particularly against it either. This is an event at the imperial embassy. It's worth seeing if it reaches the emperor's ears. The children at this time went into the room. The house is normal. There are no safety issues there. It is much more effective to conduct a conversation there. Today, as parents, a weekend meeting must be normal, and there is no need to talk about difficult topics. The Duchess and Duke declared that everything was fine, and turning to the lady, the young man smiled very awkwardly. The couple decided to escort the guests to their rooms. These two have marital harmony, which is why the lady was worried about meeting other families. As they walked, the man took his wife by the hand. Of course, all this had to be done so that the minister would notice their idyll. For some reason, the brunette noticed that the beauty's hair was wonderful. She even envied it. The pink color is actually a rarity. Lately, the newspapers are on the side of the lady. No longer will you have to worry about what happened in court. Very soon, Selfie came running. The family gave him a return gift, which was still not bad. At home, the young man showed the gift. A map of the world to Ailette. She asked why the empire and their duchy were a different color. The girl kept asking questions. She would like to go for a walk with Selfie Phoenix. Constantly makes her study. I had to read some news. The author was the same person, but it seemed like his opinion had changed dramatically. The Duchess learned something. The lady was brought the maid's file, which was also approved last time. Since the woman had been treated with favor and trust all this time, she decided that she had to give an account. According to the report, most of the villa's workers are arrogant and lazy, and the fact that they had not been transferred anywhere all this time also played a role. They still saw their future, only there. There was no choice. They even gossiped behind the young master's back, and the young man grew up listening to all this horror. When Gloria heard about the incident, she thought that Selfie was nervous about the Duchess's impending departure, but it turned out that the problem lay elsewhere. There were reasons for all the guy's actions. The lady ordered an exchange of servants and maids of the villa of Cepheus and Cripps. The others involved in the situation had to be punished for violating the confidentiality clause. The punishment should be a reduction in salary. They should not receive a letter of recommendation. From now on, all employees will change jobs every 3 years. This worried the child. We need to make sure that this does not happen again. Gloria dismissed the servants, but before that she asked how the Duchess and Theo were doing. It seemed they had not moved a single meter. Those breaking news, after all, were not directed at the lady but at the duchy itself. The lady did not think that in the end they would write an article of gratitude about her. At the trial, the fourth princess assigned a lawyer to the stepmother. The monastery to which Lillian was sent is under the jurisdiction of the mistress. Reina still performs the duties of a servant. For some reason, the heiress tried hard for the sake of a simple family. The woman decided to first talk to the Duke and then contact her uncle. Adeus arrived at the estate. It seems the master called him. He said that the hand that was injured is already fine. The person who wrote the article in Elias has been found, and the one who wrote the article recently is in the capital. The Duchess froze in horror. Surely no one had yet discovered the truth. In fact, that reporter was Fortune himself. If you go to parties, you can learn a lot there. The blonde said that he could tell you whatever the Duchess wanted to hear. Every time the young man arrived at the Duke's estate, he was amazed at its grandeur. Its construction must have required a lot of resources. Despite his high position as the emperor's closest aide, the current Duke rarely travels outside his territory. Recently, the man met the man's ex-wife. The Duchess probably doesn't know what their life was like after the marriage began. After she entered the castle, she was ignored and kept in the annex. Despite this, since this is one person's position, it can only be half believed. The woman returned to her family's estate and did not appear in public, so nothing more was heard of her. A man behind him asked if the man told people about his entire personal life in the same way. For some reason, the hero thought that the conversation would somehow help for the future of Milady. It would be nice if everything were calm. In fact, Fortune finds it most difficult to figure out the Duchess. The woman seems to be different from all the others. Even if she does all this because she loves the Duke or because she is not interested and wants to end it all, she still tries to be polite. After the conversation, the lady went to her husband's office. She asked to sit down and talk about the new information. I wonder if it was all because of Elias's article. It seems the Empire wants to expand its territory through war. The brunette remembered their conversation. He didn't understand why the guy didn't even try to change his name in the article, at least for the sake of decency. Then the blonde was warned about the breaking news. The man is trying to use the Duchess, but it will not lead to anything good. The hero knew all of Fortune's plans. Although this time the article was good, it was better to convey to the person standing above that nothing would work. Adeus is the fourth princess's assistant. The guy didn't want to say anything unnecessary or absurd, but it was worth remembering. The woman is not yet popular in high circles, so she is actively trying. There are rumors that this man is her lover. The crown princess has everything calculated. She even deliberately looks older than her age, attracting the attention of interested nobles. The woman supports Adeus, and it would be easier for them to work together, knowing that there is actually a wonderful excuse for meeting. Since Farashati was in the spotlight because she was targeting La Pharaon, she needed to be aware as well. The heroine nodded. As for Reina, she realized that it was best to ask her uncle directly. Phoenix entered the room and interrupted the conversation. He said that the priest had paid them a visit, which meant that it was high time. Two people appeared in the room instead of the expected one. They wanted to discuss their future cooperation. Ailette also appeared in the room. The little girl ran to hug her sister, not even paying attention to the others. The child was born and was not baptized as usually happens, so that the girl would not go anywhere. The master called the priests to the castle. After a while, the procedure came to an end. When it was time to speak, Phoenix allowed to start right there. Farashati raised an eyebrow. It was mentioned that cooperation with the temple. The conversation will probably also be on this topic. 3 days later, the man went to the girl again. He definitely had something to say when the lady had previously talked about going back in time. Not everyone believed her. The fact that the Duchess brought Ailette into it showed that she simply had a knack for making absurd statements. Everything has changed, as has trust, and they say that a similar case was discovered during an investigation in a mansion on the sideline. That very spring, the servant began asking to change his job. He insisted on cleaning chimneys. The cleaner who replaced the servant, having succumbed to the sweat of La Pharaon's blood, died literally within a few minutes. This happened shortly after the conversation. The brunette saw the beauty's disapproving look and asked her not to look at him like that. He himself admitted his mistakes. The gentleman is simply worried about the future. His strange brother-like selfie was born with a very strong poison. This cannot but cause great harm. People with the same last name got married only once, but it already caused a strong clash of a new level. Phoenix didn't want to believe in time travel, but it seemed like something supernatural had something to do with this situation. The man did not investigate the case all this time, but spent his energy trying to relieve the pain during the attacks. Only after a not very short time does the young man begin to realize that he needs to conduct an investigation before it is too late. The man in the hall said that Ailith was his daughter and he would take her to himself. But instead of being happy, the little girl began to whine because she wanted to remain the Duchess's sister. Then during the conversation, an acquaintance said that it was time for the girl to go out into society. He had his own special plan. A man was lucky enough to run away from home in his youth and avoid marriage. Now he needs to take responsibility for at least something in this life. Moulton distracted the lady from contemplating these two and informed her that the furniture ordered had already arrived and it was time to unload it. The maids always gathered just to talk. Some of them had just returned from vacation and were happy. 2 of the offenders had just finished working in the stables. They thought it would never happen. Of course, it's time for gossip. Many believe that the Leferians are living in idle and there can be no talk of divorce. One of the maids, who was the most guilty at the time, was exiled to a villa she can still send letters to friends. Her friends believe that the punishment should have been even more severe. One of them heard from the manager that the former duchess and the attending physician were leaving soon, and the order would be re-established. Still, despite everything, it was better to remain silent and not chatter left and right. Thanks to the duchess, it was lucky that the situation did not get worse. The maid cried, but they calmed her down. They gathered to celebrate the return. It was worth staying calm. There was a warm atmosphere in the room. As the jokes were being told, it finally became a little easier to breathe. This was a good sign. In the morning, Ailette was crying and hysterical. She did not want to leave, despite the fact that the place was near the capital. The trip could be considered a journey, but I still didn't want to part with my sister and Selfie. Still, Phoenix took the baby and they left. Gloria was also going to leave the estate to resolve her affairs on her own. Uncontrollably, the woman thought that perhaps the Duke would also leave the mansion. She could not know for sure. Letters were constantly coming for the Duchess. There were many people who wanted to see her, so news was constantly coming. The woman was going to write a response to one letter and slowly get ready to meet her uncle. Farashotti learned that one of her friends was apparently getting married, and she would like the married couple to attend the event. The tailor was called again, and he prepared a perfect outfit that everyone seemed to like. When it was all over, Knights mentioned Adeus, who had sent letters saying that he had insulted the Duchess. The ladies just waved it off if she says so. There is definitely no way out. We can't talk about fortune anymore. Farashotti was distracted. She remembered that her friend was going to get married when her future husband inherited the title of Baron Time Flies. The Duchess said she would choose a third dress. Rebecca asked if it was necessary to select clothes from the same series for His Majesty. It is a marital duty to help each other, but the young man could refuse to go. The lady did not even know how to start a conversation and ask for something. The ladies said there was another fabric that seemed to be perfect. It really is luxurious. The Duke was on his way to the meeting. Previously, his wife had chosen the outfits herself, since he had been indifferent all this time. Yesterday, the lady also sent a letter about business matters. It seems that this time she is preparing a business with her relative from the county. The Duchess also passed on information about Countess Zahart, but there was no reaction as such. The two finally arrived at the office. There was no one there, so it was decided to wait a little. After a while, the creak of a door was heard. A girl appeared. She was wearing a wonderful dress made of the same fabric. The maiden stopped because she wanted to ask the same question again. She wanted them to go with her to the ceremony. The hero didn't think long and almost immediately gave a positive answer. He decided for himself what he would do. Daniel couldn't help but notice that this reaction was new. It was as if the man had changed his attitude a little. The maid asked how the dress suited the girl, and the Duke caught himself thinking that he wanted to constantly look at his wife. Reina was escorted down the stairs, a strange expression on her face, even though it was the princess who had arranged this meeting. The brunette did not understand why they had to endure this. The beauty did not believe that her mother had killed her father. It turned out that the lady had used poison earlier. The princess heard all this, and this time went berserk. If Farashotti had not entered the Duke's family, she would have died. They had a plan, but nothing came to fruition. The girl didn't know the details. Schiff and her mother were in charge of everything. The blonde kept thinking why everything was different from the original story. The marriage was planned with the 7th princess, but the man married another. It seemed that the trial was arranged because of the curse, but the lady presented only superficial evidence. This is all vile. It would be good for Reina to answer the question of why her sister suddenly decided to get married. That girl knew everything. Most likely she understood that the family was planning something behind her back. She had a plan that worked. Even the maids, at a high time when the princess was not there, said how much they envied Farashotti's position and life. Only the princess treated Reina well, but after the trial she began to behave like a madwoman. The brunette came to some meetings. She thought that they were just sharing problems there, but every time her mother behaved strangely there. She usually did not do household chores during each meeting she was called, and forced to stand all day. In the morning, the Duke could not help but notice the gloomy expression on his wife's face. Most likely something had happened to her in the county. The girl learned about the regular meetings that the princess arranges to this day. She doesn't even try to hide them. The man said there was nothing to worry about and changed the subject. Farashotti was going to start a new business. He wondered what it would be. There was one thing that her parents had tried to do, and she needed to try to continue it. The lady blurted out something wrong. She made a mistake because in front of her is someone who spent time in the war. The hero only asked to let them know if they needed help, and finally they arrived at their destination. The princess was at a meeting at the time, and when she saw the man again, she remembered the promise she had made to herself when she came back to life, and she did not want to give up. The two went inside the pavilion, where they were immediately met by Farashati's friend, who was glad to see her. A small wedding is not comparable to what others have had. The girls tried to calm down. The size is not the main thing. Even in this place, various people were constantly flocking to the Duke. His popularity was still astonishing. The brunette answered all the questions by saying that he simply could not miss the wedding of his wife's friend. Since the day Islet left, the young man had somehow changed. Something had turned over in his head that day. Phoenix remembered the moment when the gentleman had an attack. He woke up almost immediately when his wife arrived. The main thing is to question everything. People who have survived death can become a new variable in seizures. They were advised to always be together. The girl took her hand back. It seemed to be getting hot, so it was better to move away for a while. The young man became much kinder. He agreed. The girl also asked to put a ring on her finger so that there would be no questions. When the ceremony began, the lady met her friend's eyes. She was truly happy. The wedding ceremony was excellent. Both the bride and the guests liked everything, and it seems that this is what they agreed on. Farashati was glad that they were able to come. The lady's husband's estate must be in the northwest. There is so much snow there that the girl is looking forward to it. Come to think of it, the duchy's castle is also in the north. It doesn't snow that often in the capital, so the guy probably likes to see it at least in his estate. They walked forward. It seemed the time had come to throw the bride's bouquet and then catch it. Among the girlfriends, only one remained unmarried. She was supposed to catch him, but the bride deliberately launched him into Farashati. The brunette caught the bouquet in time, which almost hit the lady's face, and they immediately began to congratulate them on their wedding. The maiden grabbed her husband by the hand and they ran away. He was already starting to worry and wanted to ask something, but suddenly she started laughing. They realized that they were holding hands unknowingly. A little before the event, the man put a ring on his wife's finger. The lady thought that she would be given something like a pendant, but not a family heirloom. Smiling, the young man suggested that they go to the castle in the Archduchy at any time. This decision would remain with my lady. Selfie met after the academy. It was raining outside, but he said he could get there himself by carriage. Ailet sent the letter as soon as the heroine received it, immediately took the envelope and went to the meeting. 2 months had passed since the lady had left. Gloria had returned to the duchy, and Phoenix and Circia had sent letters. The boy continued to attend the academy. It became noticeably colder outside, which also changed his mood. It seems the Duke was very busy, so he didn't return again. The heads of Lefirayon must defend their territory in the coldest weather. His Excellency has not been to his native land for a long time. It seems that it would be better for him to return there. That day after the banquet, the lady was not against going to the Duke's castle, but she did not think that the day would come so soon. The girl didn't know whether she would agree to go, but Selfie decided to stay so as not to interrupt his studies. This time they will go for a short period, but still skipping the academy is not the best idea. Circia wrote a lot about her native land, but she still advised asking questions to her brother. Since then, it was difficult for them to be together, so the confidence inside their hearts grew even stronger. Very soon they arrived at the place. When they came out, Terdeo immediately handed over an umbrella. The man remained silent until he asked why the lady was so busy, which was something she should have asked. The young man asked if his wife was waiting for him, and when she gave an ambiguous answer, he smiled a little and started a conversation with Selfie. The maid came in to talk in the evening. She had heard that the lady had been visiting the county frequently lately, and that she was also eating poorly because of business. The girl looked very tired, but probably because her business had failed and she had to sort it out. The company had more workers than expected, and this led to collapse. Then Farashati said that it would be easier to choose something less complicated that would resolve the situation. Her friends were interested in how the girl would continue to work, but she herself could not answer this question. Some offered to provide at least some support and ask if anyone would like to buy things from the gallery. Farashati suffered losses as she continued the business, and she understood that this could not continue. The lady, having never been involved in business, was still self-confident. Some began to suggest turning to the Duke for help. After all, they were husband and wife. He would not refuse, even if he wanted to. The lady even began to think about it. She understood that they would not refuse her. Moulton came out of the room and bumped into the Duchess. He assumed that she wanted to talk to the gentleman. Blue-Eyed asked to talk to him first, since they had such an opportunity. There were many tragedies at sea due to storms, and even a huge ship sank. Lately, the Duke has not been able to rest because the consequences of what happened have fallen on his shoulders. There is a hunting festival coming up soon, and you need to attend as a married couple. The gentleman fell asleep for the first time in a long time, so his assistant committed a rude act by sending her ladyship away.